Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Shishui's own grandfather, who also aspired to be Hokage, perished on a secret mission. Despite these painful lessons, the Uchiha still yearned for the title of Hokage. Did the Hokage position truly hold such allure? Was it so powerful that it drove countless clan members to sacrifice themselves, much like moths to a flame? Noticing Shishui's distracted expression, Itachi patiently waited before asking, "Shishui, what were you just thinking about? Were you thinking about how to become Hokage?" Shishui, snapping out of his thoughts, shook his head with a hint of fear. "No, I wasn't. I was thinking that maybe neither the clan nor we should aim for the position of Hokage. We should stay quietly within the police force instead. The Uchiha can still uphold the will of fire by serving there." Itachi looked surprised. Shishui wasn't just any ninja, he was the youngest jonin in the clan, and his future potential might even surpass his father's, putting him on par with the previous clan leaders. For Shishui to have no aspirations of becoming Hokage was unexpected, especially since almost all Uchiha ninjas desired it, hoping for a new Uchiha Hokage to emerge one day. Just as Itachi was about to persuade his older cousin, he received feedback from his shadow clone. The clone he had left at the Ninja Academy had been dispelled, and he needed to return immediately, otherwise, the teachers would scold him, and his parents would be disappointed. Realizing this, Itachi stood up slowly, bowed, and said, "My shadow clone has been discovered, so I have to return to the village right away. I'll come visit you tonight." Shishui nodded and replied, "See you tonight, then." As soon as Shishui finished speaking, Itachi used the teleportation jutsu and vanished. His speed far surpassed that of an average academy student, even exceeding most geinin and chunin. Watching Itachi disappear into the distance, Shishui couldn't help but marvel at his talent, recognizing that Itachi's potential rivaled his own. Once Itachi was gone, Shishui stood there, lost in thought. He had no idea what path lay ahead for him or the clan. Should he seek guidance from Lord Third? Or perhaps another ninja? Byakuya of Hidden Rain Village was a good option, but Shishui had no reason to leave the village, let alone travel to Hidden Rain Village to seek him out. With a sigh, Shishui began training alone. If thinking wouldn't yield answers, then growing stronger was the only path forward. His 3 Tomoe Sharingan could easily see through an enemy's weaknesses, but it couldn't glimpse the future of the Uchiha. At the Hokage's office, Jiraiya anxiously pushed open the door to the office. Upon seeing his former teacher, the 3rd Hokage, seated behind the desk, his gaze dimmed with sorrow. Before returning to the village, Jiraiya had already learned of the 4th Hokage and Kushina's sacrifice, but seeing his teacher sitting in the Hokage's chair instead of Minato stirred a complex wave of emotions within him. Noticing Jiraiya enter, the 3rd Hokage lifted his head. Neither master nor student spoke. The air in the office was thick with sadness, as one had lost an heir, and the other had lost a beloved student. After a moment of silence, Jiraiya hesitantly asked, "Old man, is Minato really gone? Didn't he master the Flying Thunder God technique? Could anyone in the ninja world really kill him?" The 3rd Hokage sighed softly and replied, "To be precise, Minato and Kushina are listed as missing. But Minato used the Reaper Death Seal, and Kushina lost the 9 tails. After so many days with no news, their deaths are almost certain. They gave everything to keep the 9 tails in the village. Both of them fought with all they had." Jiraiya sighed in response, unable to argue. The 3rd was right. If Minato had wanted to flee, no one in the ninja world could have stopped him. But instead of escaping, Minato chose to use the Reaper Death Seal to seal the 9 tails within their newborn son, Naruto, ensuring the beast stayed within the village. After all, if the 9 tails had been killed, there was no telling when or where it would reincarnate. If Hidden Leaf Village lost the mighty 9 tails, the other ninja villages, always looking for an opportunity, would undoubtedly launch an attack, igniting yet another great war. Additionally, Minato loved Kushina dearly and likely had thoughts of following her in death. But this left their child to suffer. Barely born, Naruto had lost both his parents, and his future would undoubtedly be filled with hardships. Thinking of this, Jiraiya looked at the third Hokage and asked, "Old man, where is Naruto right now? The masked man might attack him again." "Naruto has been properly taken care of by me." After a pause, the third Hokage revealed his plan. "In the days to come, I intend to conceal Naruto's identity and raise him as an ordinary child. This is also for his protection. Old man, I trust your arrangements." Jiraiya nodded slightly, feeling reassured by the third Hokage's plans. Even if they concealed Naruto's identity, the third Hokage would never neglect him. However, with Minato gone, it seemed like he had one less reason to stay in the village. Of the few people he could talk to in the village, besides the old man, there was Orochimaru. He wondered how Orochimaru was doing and whether he had moved on from the shadow of losing the Hokage election. At this moment, Jiraiya seemed to recall something and said, "Old man, since Minato has been confirmed missing, shouldn't the village elect the next Hokage? We can't have you overworking yourself forever." The third Hokage glanced at Jiraiya and said, "That's exactly why I called you here. With Minato's sacrifice, don't you, as his teacher, bear the responsibility to inherit the land and become the new Hokage?" Jiraiya's expression turned difficult. He had grown accustomed to a free and easy life and couldn't handle the constraints that came with being Hokage. Becoming Hokage was a difficult dream for most Jonin, but for him, it was a significant hassle. Once he became Hokage, he wouldn't only have to deal with daily duties, his personal freedom would also be restricted. If he wanted to leave the village, he'd have to consult with other high-ranking officials and take a guard squad with him. His small hobbies would be hard to pursue with a guard squad in tow. Unless he disregarded Hidden Leaf Village's reputation, but he could never act in a way that would dishonor Hidden Leaf Village. With this in mind, Jiraiya said to the third Hokage, "Orochimaru would be a good candidate. He also ran for the fourth Hokage position, and if he becomes the fifth, the Jonin in the village shouldn't object." Mentioning Orochimaru, the third Hokage's expression changed slightly, and he frowned. Orochimaru spends all his time in the lab and doesn't have time to take on the role of Hokage. Besides, he's been getting too close to Denzo lately, which could influence him. To be fair, the third Hokage didn't want to see Orochimaru become Hokage. Although Orochimaru was his most talented disciple, with his eye for talent and contributions to the village, he was more than qualified to be the new Hokage. However, Orochimaru had a fatal flaw, his overly cold personality. On the battlefield, he could ruthlessly kill enemies and devise strategies that sacrificed a few for victory, which contradicted the essence of the Will of Fire. Not only that, during the earlier Wood-style project, his gaze towards the volunteers was no different from that of a scientist looking at lab mice. When volunteers transformed into tree people, there was no emotional fluctuation on Orochimaru's face. A ninja like that could manage the village, but he absolutely could not be Hokage. If everyone emulated Orochimaru, the Will of Fire would lose its meaning. However, the third Hokage couldn't express these thoughts in front of Jiraiya. After pondering for a moment, the third Hokage continued, "You can recommend Orochimaru to be Hokage, but there should be at least 2 candidates in the election. If you agree to run for Hokage or bring Tsunade back, I can immediately convene a meeting of all Jonin." Jiraiya remained silent for a few seconds, not wanting to continue this topic. He didn't want to become Hokage, and Tsunade definitely didn't want to either. Since she left the village in anger a few years ago, she hadn't returned. At most, she only showed up to support the front lines during wartime. To be honest, he didn't even have the confidence to bring Tsunade back, let alone persuade her to run for 5th Hokage. For now, he could only play dead and avoid the topic. Seeing Jiraiya fall silent, the third Hokage realized his plan had failed. He had originally hoped to trick Jiraiya into running for Hokage, but that plan now seemed unfeasible. Still, his health was holding up, he could manage for another 3 to 5 years. He hoped that by then, Jiraiya and Tsunade would come to their senses. The village needed a young Hokage to inject vitality, he could no longer risk any actions that might disrupt the balance. As Jiraiya and the third Hokage negotiated over the position of Hokage, Denzo appeared in the corridor outside. Hearing Jiraiya's disdain for the Hokage role, Denzo's old face twitched, and he unconsciously gripped his cane tighter, his nails digging into the wood. If Jiraiya was unwilling to take on the Hokage role, then perhaps the old man could serve in that capacity. Had he really worked diligently for the village all these years only to be overshadowed by a wandering Tsunade? Just because she was Tsunade, the granddaughter of Hashirama and Tobirama? Clearing his throat a few times to assert his presence, Denzo pushed open the office door. From the force with which he opened it, the door seemed heavier than before. Did Saratobi anticipate his foul mood and the possibility of him leaving in anger? Reining in his wandering thoughts, Denzo approached the desk, handed the meeting records to the third Hokage, and said slowly, I've completed the work on clan land distribution. Aside from the Uchiha being dissatisfied, the other clans are quite satisfied. However, I'm concerned that the Uchiha may cause trouble, so I propose installing surveillance near their territory to monitor their movements and guard against potential attacks. The third Hokage took the records, glanced over them, and said, let's skip the surveillance. The Uchiha are part of the village, and we can't treat them differently. As for the clan territory issues, I'll go discuss it with Fugaku in a few days. Seeing the third Hokage's leniency towards the Uchiha, Denzo's expression turned sour. Sarutobi, you're being too lenient. The Uchiha must be kept under surveillance to ensure the village's safety, especially since this Kyubi incident is closely related to them. Upon hearing this, Jiraiya leaned in, curious. Denzo, do you know the identity of the attacker? Did you fight the masked man that day? Denzo's expression grew awkward. He hadn't actually fought the masked man. After a moment, he forcefully explained, I didn't fight the masked man, but based on the information we have, it should be confirmed that the masked man is an Uchiha who has developed space-time ninjutsu. The Kyubi incident was a collaboration between the masked man and the Uchiha to overthrow the village. Jiraiya fixed his gaze on Denzo, saying, Elder Denzo, you still lack concrete evidence to support this claim. Why must it be the Uchiha? Other ninjas could also learn Flying Thunder God technique. Denzo felt anger rising. He already disliked Jiraiya. Only Madara Uchiha has controlled tail beasts to attack the village. No other ninja can accomplish that. Who else could it be if not the Uchiha? Moreover, only the village has complete space-time ninjutsu, and only people from the village have access to it. As Denzo and Jiraiya argued, the third Hokage suddenly recalled something he had nearly forgotten. On the day of the Kyubi incident, the sealing book had also been stolen. That book contained records of nearly all of Hidden Leaf Village's forbidden techniques. Was the masked man's goal not to destroy Hidden Leaf Village but to obtain the sealing book? But the ninjas recorded in the sealing book were high-risk techniques that didn't necessarily yield high returns. What exactly was the masked man's purpose in stealing the sealing book? After contemplating for a moment, the third Hokage realized he had no good leads. The lost sealing book couldn't be recovered, but fortunately, there were multiple copies, so the village hadn't entirely lost those forbidden techniques. Perhaps they could just monitor whether any of the forbidden techniques from the sealing book appeared across the ninja world. That might reveal the masked man's true identity and the deeper reasons behind the Kyubi incident. At that moment, hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. The Hokage's assistant burst through the door, breathless, and looked into the office. Seeing the chaotic scene in the Hokage's office, the assistant was momentarily taken aback, then quickly handed a scroll of information to the third Hokage, saying, Lord Third, Lord Denzo, Lord Jiraiya, we've received news from the border. Hidden Clouds Village has declared war on the Land of Fire. Chapter 170, Kabuto and Kakashi. Hidden Clouds Village has declared war? Upon hearing this news, the third Hokage's expression darkened immediately. Both Denzo and Jiraiya stopped their argument and looked at the Hokage assistant who had delivered the information. After reading through the scroll, the third Hokage gestured for the assistant to leave and then said to Denzo and Jiraiya, this report is accurate. Hidden Clouds Village is indeed launching an attack against us. With that, the third Hokage sighed softly. After the Kyubi incident, he had anticipated that this day would come, whether it would be Hidden Stones Village, Hidden Village stirring in the north, or Hidden Clouds Village in the northeast keeping a watchful eye. He just hadn't expected that Hidden Clouds Village would initiate war so quickly. They weren't prepared for it yet. Jiraiya furrowed his brow and asked in confusion, the major conflicts in the ninja world have already concluded. Why is Hidden Clouds Village starting a war? They lost their third Raikage in the last Great War. Denzo glanced at Jiraiya, discontented with his lack of understanding. Although Hidden Clouds Village lost their third Raikage in the last Ninja World War, their overall fighting capacity hasn't suffered significantly. Moreover, with the growth of the Jinchuriki like Killer Bee and the one from the Hazuki clan, they feel they now have the qualifications to challenge us. However, it's a good thing they are initiating war since we can weaken them. Denzo was consistently hardline on external issues, a staunch hawk who advocated using any means necessary to deal with enemy forces, including assassinating high-ranking officials from enemy nations and launching attacks disguised as the enemy in neutral countries. Hearing the mention of Jinchuriki, Jiraiya's expression grew somber. If the fourth Hokage and his wife were still alive, Hidden Clouds Village wouldn't be brave enough to initiate an attack. Now, lacking a Jinchuriki, Hidden Leaf Village was already at a disadvantage before the war had even begun. After all, each qualified Jinchuriki had the combat strength equivalent to a Kage and possessed destructive power greater than that of the 5 Kages. After a moment of silence, the third Hokage waved his hand and said, Gather the Jonin from all major departments of the village for a meeting. We can't avoid this war. Following the third Hokage's order, a pre-war meeting was quickly convened in the Hokage building. Upon learning that Hidden Cloud's village was invading from the northeast towards the Land of Water, the faces of the Jonin present darkened. None wanted to endure another war. The reason was simple. Since the Second Ninja World War broke out 20 years ago, Hidden Leaf Village had enjoyed a period of peace and harmony, having been under the shadow of war for so long. After finally enduring the years where even 9-year-old children had to go to battle and survive the Nine Tails incident, which cost them many elite forces, they had only just regained a semblance of peace for less than a month before Hidden Cloud's village decided to attack. However, reality wouldn't change because of their thoughts. They had to unite to overcome this crisis. Given that this was a single-front war, Hidden Leaf Village wouldn't face the same level of pressure as in previous conflicts. After many Jonin recommended him, Jiraiya was appointed as the commander on the battlefield against Hidden Cloud's village. Denzo also considered vying for the commander position but ultimately abandoned the idea at this critical moment. Firstly, aside from the Dream Beasts, he had no other large summoning beasts to counter the Jinchuriki. Secondly, he wanted to quietly build up strength to avoid unnecessary losses. If all went as expected, many ninjas would perish on the battlefield, making it the best time to eliminate unstable factors. With that in mind, Denzo recommended Fugaku to be the vice commander. Everyone, I believe the captain of the police force, Fugaku Uchiha, would be suitable to serve as Jiraiya's deputy. Upon hearing Denzo's recommendation, Fugaku's expression was one of skepticism. He knew this was Denzo's scheme aimed at weakening the Uchiha's numbers through war. Yet, after contemplating for a moment, Fugaku accepted Denzo's recommendation and became the vice commander on the front lines. Even knowing this was a trap, the Uchiha couldn't miss the opportunity to prove themselves as the best choice for the fifth Hokage. Through the trials of blood and iron, the Uchiha's overall strength would only grow stronger. Seeing Fugaku take on the role of vice commander at the front lines against Hidden Cloud's village, many Jonin envied the Uchiha for their newfound power, while others subtly mocked them. The third Hokage did not oppose Denzo's recommendation, considering the Uchiha had not suffered many losses during the Kyuubi incident. Having the Uchiha assist Jiraiya in the battle against Hidden Cloud's village would be ideal. The Uchiha and Hyuga clans could effectively counter Hidden Cloud's village as masters of physical techniques. Even the most troublesome Jinchuriki could be interfered with by the Uchiha through their Sharingan Genjutsu. After establishing the arrangements for the front lines against Hidden Cloud's village, they also strategized for defenses in other directions. Even the Hidden Stones village and Hidden Mist village, who had been in a state of truce, and Hidden Sand village, who had become allies, had to be watched carefully. War could erupt into a new round of the Ninja World War at any moment. After the pre-war meeting concluded, Denzo left the Hokage building. He glanced at the Hokage's office, his eyes filled with determination and resolve. In war, a Hokage could not be easily replaced, and Hidden Cloud's village's invasion undoubtedly solidified Saratobi's position. However, he was not without his gains. He had received permission to expand the root organization. Only during wartime would the third Hokage slightly relax restrictions, allowing him to act freely. Using this opportunity, he could expand the number of root members several-fold, surpassing the scale of his previous journey to the Rain Village. There were two ways to recruit root members, directly from active duty and cultivating war orphans. The former involved recruiting excellent ninjas who had graduated from the Ninja Academy and had served for many years, who could quickly become combatants for the root without much training, though they could not guarantee absolute loyalty. After all, these people would eventually become members of the third Hokage's Anbu and couldn't be trusted completely. The latter, while providing absolute loyalty, had a very long training period. Cultivating a qualified confidant required at least half a year of careful training, with a high attrition rate during that training. After weighing his options, Denzo decided he would pursue both strategies, cultivating war orphans as trusted subordinates and recruiting elite active duty ninjas. Only this way could he ensure the efficiency of Root's operations. With this in mind, Denzo had already identified suitable candidates and changed direction toward the Hatake residence. His target was the son of White Fang, the fourth Hokage's student, Kakashi Hatake. Before long, Denzo arrived at the Hatake home and found Kakashi lying despondently on the tatami mat. He couldn't help but frown. It was just the death of a teacher. Did he really need to be this negative? Ninjas were fundamental tools in the hands of those in power. Tools shouldn't have feelings, they just needed to obey orders and complete missions. Considering Kakashi's demonstrated talent, Denzo patiently knocked on the door. A few minutes later, he heard footsteps on the floor, and the door was slowly opened. Seeing that it was Denzo, the leader of the root organization, Kakashi said expressionlessly, "What do you need from me, Denzo?" I am here to invite you to join Root. The village is now at war, and we need your help." Upon hearing this, Kakashi narrowed his eyes. To most ninjas, Root was seen as a training ground for the Anbu. But as a disciple of the Hokage, Kakashi understood that although Root was ostensibly a training department for the Anbu, it also had its own armed faction directly under Denzo. The nature of Root was simple: it was the Anbu of the Anbu. Denzo's visit was clearly not about restoring him to his former position but rather about recruiting him into Root. With that thought, Kakashi shook his head and said, "Does the village need someone as useless as me, who can't even protect anyone? Even without joining Root, I can still go to the front lines to complete missions. Besides, Denzo, Root is too dark. I don't want to be part of it." Denzo glanced at Kakashi but didn't take offense at his frankness. He said meaningfully, "Root embodies the village's dark side, and naturally, it is filled with darkness. But that is the very purpose of Root's existence. Only by quietly working in the shadows can we allow the leaves to thrive under the sun. My invitation for you to join Root comes from recognizing the darkness within you. Only a ninja like you can protect the village from the shadows. Moreover, your heart is in turmoil right now. By joining Root and completing missions, you can temporarily forget your past and simply become the Root of Hidden Leaf Village." Kakashi fell silent. Denzo's words struck a chord with him. Recently, he had been restless because of memories from the past. If there were a chance to forget himself and become an ordinary ninja, perhaps that would be a good decision. Seeing Kakashi hesitating, Denzo continued, "Kakashi, you can rest assured that you are different from others. Even if you join Root, I won't plant the curse mark on you. As long as you wish to leave Root, you can do so at any time. I won't stop you." After hearing this, Kakashi fell into deep thought. After a while, he looked at Denzo, who was smiling. "Denzo, when can I report to Root?" With Kakashi successfully recruited, Denzo felt quite pleased and directed him to report to Root immediately. Kakashi was not just any ninja, he was the son of Hidden Leaf Village's White Fang, Tsukumo Hatake, and the youngest jonin in the village. Over time, he would inevitably reach the heights of Hidden Leaf Village's White Fang. Moreover, in addition to his ninja talent, Kakashi possessed a Sharingan gifted by the Uchiha clan. For a ninja of his level, the Sharingan had become less useful. Its enhanced dynamic vision relied on the body's ability to react, and its inability to deactivate consumed a considerable amount of chakra. However, the Sharingan had an almost legendary secret technique that could turn the tide in crucial moments. When faced with the relentless pursuit of enemy ninjas, if not for Kagami Uchiha using that technique to reverse the situation, he might have perished in the Second Ninja World War. Those were hard times. Hidden Leaf Village had not only lost the first Hokage but also Tobirama-sensei. Reclaiming his scattered thoughts, Denzo arrived outside the Hidden Leaf Village orphanage under the cover of night. Seeing the dilapidated sign of the orphanage and the smiling Nano Yakushi at the entrance, Denzo's expression turned sharp. Nano had once been his ace, completing many missions for him. However, after a particularly deadly task, Nano retired from Root and became the director of the orphanage, breaking free from Denzo's control. Over the years, Nano not only ignored Denzo's summons but even refused to hand over the war orphans. These orphans, free from attachments, were mostly the descendants of ninjas, making them ideal candidates for Root. But Nano had the audacity to confront him over these war orphans, which had left Denzo simmering with anger. Now that he had received permission to expand the Root ninja roster, whether to recruit students from the orphanage was no longer up to Nano. However, using these orphans to coerce Nano was also a viable option. With the situation in Hidden Stone's village, Root was in need of a decent spy. Sending someone to the Land of Rain would be a good choice. With this in mind, Denzo appeared before Nano, blocking her path. Seeing Denzo standing in her way, Nano's expression instantly darkened. She looked at him cautiously and said, "Denzo, why are you here?" Since the fourth Hokage's death, Nano had been worried that Denzo would come knocking. She never expected that after only 1 month of peace, he would actually show up. She didn't know if she could protect the children of the orphanage from Denzo. After locking eyes, Denzo smiled and said, "The Wandering Maiko, it's been a while. How has life been for you as the director?" "I came to visit the children of the orphanage on behalf of the village." Nano swallowed hard, her face anxious as she said, "Denzo, please don't recruit anyone from the orphanage. They are just a group of poor children." Denzo narrowed his eyes. "You know better than I do what Root's duty is. If we didn't bear the darkness in secret, the village wouldn't have the peace it enjoys today. They have enjoyed Hidden Leaf Village's tranquility, so they naturally need to contribute to the village. Do you expect me to abandon the recruitment of orphans from outside the village and instead cultivate the children within the village? Isn't that a bit selfish of you?" Faced with the pressure Denzo exerted, Nano was at a loss for words. Denzo was different from the previous root ninjas who had visited. He was a powerful figure in the village. With his strength and influence, he could easily crush a mere orphanage. But if he demanded she hand over the children, she could not comply. It seemed there was only one option left, to exchange herself for the other children at the orphanage. After all, she had come from the orphanage herself and was more useful than the children. Just then, noticing something was off, Kabuto put down the broom he was holding and walked over. Kabuto glanced at the tense Nano and then at the darkly imposing Denzo, quickly grasping the situation. "Director, is this old gentleman someone you know?" Chapter 171, Kabuto and Kakashi, Part 2. After seeing Kabuto approach him, Denzo squinted slightly, examining the young boy before him with interest and not in a creepy way. But as expected, this boy was likely from the orphanage. However, unlike other war orphans, this boy appeared much braver, with eyes filled with a maturity uncommon for his age. A child like this would be well suited to be trained in the route and later sent as a spy to enemy ninja villages. Seeing Denzo take an interest in Kabuto, Nano became very anxious and quickly went to protect the child. "Lord Denzo, he is a kind-hearted child, not at all suitable for training in the route." Hearing this, Denzo glanced coldly at Nano and sternly replied, "Director Nano, the route doesn't just recruit ninjas randomly. It's always voluntary and based on initiative." Nano didn't believe Denzo's nonsense at all. Being from the route herself, she knew far better than anyone how dark the route truly was. Once someone joined the route, they would be reduced to nothing more than a tool, and the training process in the route was extremely brutal. The only place in the ninja world that could compare was the Bloody Mist village. Waving his hand, Denzo didn't allow Nano to speak further and instead turned to Kabuto. "I am Denzo Shimura, an advisor to the Hokage. I've come here to recruit subordinates. Are you willing to leave the orphanage and serve me and the village?" Kabuto glanced at Denzo, then at Nano, and asked, "If I become your subordinate, does that mean I'll become a ninja?" "I've always wanted to become a ninja so I can protect everyone in the orphanage." Kabuto's simple and sincere dream made Denzo smile. He then began to paint a promising picture like 10 times he did with hundreds of other children before. "Of course, my subordinates are ninjas and elite ones at that. Once you become my subordinate, I will personally train you until you are strong enough to stand on your own as a ninja." At that moment, from a distance, Nano gave Kabuto a signal, indicating that he should refuse immediately. Seeing Nano's signal, Kabuto hesitated before saying to Denzo, "The director doesn't seem to want me to leave. I think I'll stay here for now." Denzo's expression suddenly turned serious. "Are you really planning to stay here? The orphanage can't take care of you forever. Sooner or later, you'll have to face reality." With that, Denzo began walking out of the orphanage. After Denzo left, Nano let out a sigh of relief. She walked over to Kabuto and gently patted his head. "I was so worried about you just now. I'm glad you didn't agree to his request." Kabuto curiously asked, "Director, is he really an advisor to the Hokage? Why are you so afraid of him?" Nano sighed softly and replied, "Yes, Lord Denzo is indeed a Hokage advisor and has great power in the village. But whatever you do, don't become his subordinate. It's too dangerous there." Seeing Nano's gloomy expression, Kabuto sighed inwardly. He had already learned of Denzo's identity during the Nine Tails incident, and under Lord Byakuya's guidance, he had witnessed Denzo's actions in preventing the police force from heading to the battlefield. Although he didn't fully understand why Denzo stopped the police force, he knew that only a bad person would do something like that. Moreover, while sweeping the courtyard earlier, he had overheard the conversation between Denzo and the director. Coupled with the previous visits from the root ninjas, Kabuto knew that Denzo wouldn't give up easily. Denzo's purpose in coming here was not only to recruit the orphans but also to recruit the director. Although the director appeared kind and gentle, in reality, she was a ninja from the village. Kabuto realized this after learning the chakra refinement technique and officially becoming a ninja himself. To make Denzo give up, there were only two options: either the director agreed to Denzo's conditions, or Kabuto volunteered to join Denzo's organization. Kabuto leaned more toward the second option. He had become a ninja to protect the orphanage, his home. For this home, the director was like a mother to them all, and as the oldest child, Kabuto felt he was the most suitable person to sacrifice and contribute for the sake of this family. Denzo's visit to recruit from the orphanage was surely something that Lord Byakuya had anticipated. Lord Byakuya was a ninja far more powerful than Denzo. Both in strength and strategy, he surpassed Denzo, who was viewed as an enemy of the orphanage. Kabuto knew he had to act according to Lord Byakuya's plans. He couldn't just stay in the orphanage and rely on the director's protection forever. That night, while the director and the others were asleep, Kabuto quietly slipped out of the orphanage. He had been doing this for several months now, sneaking out every night to train in the ninjutsu that Lord Byakuya had provided, silently enhancing his own abilities. But this time, he wasn't going out to train. He was going to meet someone. After leaving the orphanage for about 50 meters, Kabuto encountered Denzo, who was hiding in the shadows in a corner. Kabuto, feeling nervous, said, Lord Denzo. Denzo glanced at Kabuto as if trying to see through him with his gaze. After observing Kabuto for a long time, Denzo couldn't figure out much. He stroked his chin and slowly said, Kabuto, stop pretending. I knew you would come, and you knew I'd be waiting here for you. Earlier, with Nano present, you couldn't speak your mind. Since the hurdles are gone, tell me your true decision. Lord Denzo, if I become your subordinate, will I really become stronger? This is a given. Denzo narrowed his eyes and continued, do you have any other questions? Feel free to ask about anything, even matters like your treatment. If I remember correctly, the orphanage received a few donations this year, but it's still far from enough to cover expenses, right? Hearing this, Kabuto's expression changed slightly. He then looked shocked and said, Lord Denzo, you already know? How did you figure out what I was thinking? Denzo reveled in Kabuto's shock and said indifferently, reading people's intentions is part of the Roots training. Of course, I know what Yudi-senpai. If you join the Root, I'll immediately provide funds to the orphanage and promise not to recruit any more children. Having you will be enough. Upon hearing this, Kabuto no longer hesitated and quickly said, Lord Denzo, if you really keep your word, I'll be your subordinate from now on. The next morning, Kabuto, led by Denzo, walked into the Root training base. The base was located in the back mountains of Hidden Leaf Village. After passing through a cross-shaped courtyard, the two entered the base and saw a group of Root ninjas inside the training grounds. When the Root ninjas saw Denzo, they all lowered their heads in respect. Seeing this, Kabuto couldn't deny feeling nervous. Although he had witnessed the chaos caused by the Nine Tails, back then, he had Lord Byakuya by his side at that time. Now, he was relying solely on himself. After the Nine Tails rampage, Lord Byakuya had stopped communicating and seemed to have left Hidden Leaf Village. Perhaps it was because Kabuto had joined the Root, and Lord Byakuya feared being detected by Denzo or other Root ninjas. Kabuto knew if that happened, he would be exposed. Just as Kabuto was about to say something to Denzo, he was handed over to a Jonin from the Root. The Jonin was Ryuma Borame. Glancing at the bewildered and naive-looking Kabuto, Ryuma silently shook his head. Another unfortunate soul was forced into the Root. He remembered how he had been tricked into joining the Root years ago. If it weren't for his talent and luck, he would never have risen to his current position as Denzo's second-in-command. Looking at the roster, Ryuma said, So, you're the new recruit, Kabuto. Lord Denzo has already mentioned your name to me. Soon, someone will come to provide you with clothes, bedding, and the books you'll need to study. For now, you can get acquainted with the others or do nothing at all. Alright. Kabuto nodded and asked, What's your name, senpai? How should I address you? At the word senpai, Ryuma's eyes flashed with a trace of panic. After glancing around warily, he said with a lingering sense of dread, Just call me Ryuma. And don't use the term senpai. Why? Kabuto was puzzled. He was used to being polite. Ryuma recalled past events involving Lord Byakuya's explosive rage, then shook his head and said, Because I hate that title, and Lord Denzo doesn't like it either. By the way, since you've joined the Root, you'll need to give yourself a code name. Root ninjas have no past, and we address each other by code names. Kabuto, obedient as always, replied, Thank you for the reminder, Ryuma. But is Ryuma also a code name? No, that's just my actual name. Seeing Kabuto's puzzled look, Ryuma added, I used to have a code name, but once you reach the Jonin level, code names don't really matter anymore. Kabuto nodded. His conversation with Ryuma had provided him with a lot of useful information. Just as Kabuto was about to ask another question, Denzo appeared again, this time accompanied by a white-haired boy with a masked face. The white-haired boy exuded an air of indifference, his eyes devoid of life. Ryuma also noticed the boy and commented with a sigh, Lord Denzo is truly remarkable, even Kakashi has been recruited into the Root. Kakashi? Ryuma, you accidentally leaked information about the new recruit. Ryuma waved his hand dismissively and said in the tone of a seasoned veteran, Kabuto, Kakashi isn't some newcomer. He's the village's youngest Jonin and a prominent figure from back in the day. Although I'm currently much stronger than he is, the future is unpredictable. Well then, I've already said too much today. Knowing too much without understanding the need for secrecy can be very dangerous. After warning Kabuto one last time, Ryuma left the training grounds. At that moment, Kakashi, who was following Denzo, noticed Kabuto in the training area, a hint of surprise in his eyes. The boy in the training field was far too young. Typically, a ninja would need to graduate from the academy and pass the Chunin exams to join the Anbu or Root. Only with Chunin-level skills could one qualify for high-level missions in those organizations. But this child appeared several years younger than Kakashi. Could he already have the skills of a Chunin? Or was this one of Denzo's secret protégés, not recorded in the official ninja records? As Kakashi let his thoughts wander, he stopped paying attention to the boy. He had grown accustomed to such things. Whether this child was a genius who graduated early or a ninja secretly trained by Denzo, it had nothing to do with him. All Kakashi wanted now was to complete his missions and numb himself from his thoughts. After a brief moment of eye contact, Kabuto caught Kakashi's gaze. He could tell from Kakashi's eyes that he understood this person's inner world. Reflecting on the boastful and talkative Ryuma earlier, Kabuto began to form a new understanding of the root. Previously, he had believed that all root ninjas were mere tools, devoid of emotions. But now, he realized that root ninjas indeed had emotions, they just suppressed them intentionally. If these emotions were not released, these ninjas would eventually suffer psychological issues and possibly become mentally twisted. Some might even end up committing suicide. Kabuto thought to himself that he, too, would soon become one of them. He could only hope for good luck, that he could quickly gain enough strength to protect himself in this brutal environment, and one day return to the orphanage. About 10 minutes later, Kakashi entered the training ground. What seemed like a rare and unlikely encounter earlier, now had them standing close to each other, but both were too socially awkward to initiate conversation. After a moment of hesitation, Kabuto took the initiative and asked, "Kakashi-senpai, why did you join the route? I've heard Ryuma mention you. You're known as a genius in the village." Kakashi glanced at Kabuto and chose not to respond. As Kakashi stared at him, Kabuto muttered to himself, "Kakashi-senpai, I joined because I want to become a ninja to protect my family. I assume you're here for the same reason. To become a ninja and protect family?" Kakashi frowned. If Kabuto wanted to become a ninja, shouldn't he have gone to the ninja academy? Why would he join a route? But after thinking it over, it made sense. For those outside of the village's main children, becoming a ninja wasn't so easy. Denzo likely saw potential in Kabuto and brought him into the route for training. However, those without formal ninja academy education would find it hard to leave the route and serve elsewhere. The mention of protecting family, however, struck a chord with Kakashi. It seemed he no longer had anyone left to protect. The only reason he kept living was to see the world in place of his fallen comrades, but even then, the world was too dark to bother. With a touch of self-deprecation, Kakashi said, "Then, work hard and strengthen yourself to protect your family. As for me, I no longer have anyone left to protect, they've all left already." Chapter 172, Uchiha and Hidden Cloud Village. Hidden Cloud's village. While Kakashi and Kabuto were chatting idly in the route, the Uchiha clan district next door was bustling with activity. Upon hearing that Fugaku Uchiha had been appointed as the deputy commander of the front line, the Uchiha clansmen erupted with excitement. A deputy commander was still a commander, and in the past, only corps members aligned with the Hokage had ever held such a position. The fact that the upper echelons of Hidden Leaf Village had now entrusted Fugaku with the role of deputy commander meant that the Uchiha clan was one step closer to the Hokage seat. All that was left was to defeat the invading Hidden Cloud forces, and with the weight of that victory, they could push forward to contest for the position of Hokage. Moreover, after experiencing the life and death trials of war, many among the clan would likely awaken the three Tomoe Sharingan. While the Uchiha doves felt deeply uneasy about the clansmen's reaction, fearing war and the loss of loved ones, they couldn't deny that this war had been provoked by Hidden Cloud's village. Surrendering without a fight was not an option. As a result, the clansmen and doves of the Uchiha clan united for the moment. In just half a day, the Uchiha organized several elite squads to join the main forces headed to the front lines. Shizue Uchiha was naturally a member of one of these squads. As one of the strongest within the clan, he couldn't avoid the Hokage's orders, and his loyalty to the village left him no room to back down. However, after his recent conversation with Itachi, the words of Byakuya kept echoing in his mind, "The Uchiha will never become Hokage. Any Uchiha who dreams of becoming Hokage is doomed to unhappiness." Shizue tried to forget those words, but whenever he saw the fervor for war among his clansmen, they resurfaced in his mind. He sighed softly, pulling himself from his wandering thoughts. Although he personally had no desire to become Hokage, he couldn't force his clan to give up on the dream. After all, how many shinobi in Hidden Leaf Village didn't aspire to become the Hokage? The Hokage title not only represented glory but also the power to lead the entire village. At that moment, his teammate Tekka noticed Shizue's troubled expression and approached. "Shizue, you don't look well. Is something on your mind?" The third member of their team, another Uchiha, also chimed in, "If something's bothering you, feel free to share. Maybe we can help." Shizue glanced at the two of them before replying, I do have some concerns. I've been thinking that maybe the Uchiha don't need to pursue the Hokage position. As long as we remain in the police force, that should be enough. Also, it's not good for the police force to be exclusively controlled by the Uchiha. We should let more shinobi from other clans join. Hearing this, Tekka frowned, his expression turning serious. Shizue, do you realize what you're saying? Our Uchiha clan co-founded this village with a senju. How can we give up on the Hokage seat? And the police force was a reward given to us by the second Hokage. It rightfully belongs to the Uchiha. Besides, have you ever seen the third or fourth Hokage inviting Uchiha members into their ranks? The departments of the Hokage are also controlled by their allies, not to mention the medical and intelligence divisions, which are monopolized by other clans. Shizue, you may be talented, but you're still too naive with these idealistic thoughts. Shizue opened his mouth to speak but closed it again only to speak finally, if the Uchiha don't open up the police force, we will remain isolated from the village. If this continues, we'll be pushed to the edge. Tekka shot Shizue a dark look and said, why do you always side with outsiders? With our Uchiha strength, we deserve more. With that, Tekka quickened his pace, clearly no longer interested in discussing the matter. Seeing the reactions of his teammates, Shizue sighed inwardly. He had anticipated this outcome. His clansmen would never understand his feelings. Moreover, Tekka was wrong about one thing. The Uchiha were nowhere near as strong as the Hokage's faction. Even if the clan were united, they might barely match the strength of one of the legendary Sannin, but standing against the combined might of all those aligned with the Hokage? There was no hope of winning. The three of them, all Jonin, quickly made their way to the borders of the Land of Fire. A few days later, when they were about 10 kilometers from the national border, Shizue sensed something and signaled his teammates to halt. After a few moments, they spotted a squad of shinobi in the distance. The squad wore hidden Lee village headbands, but their cautious demeanor suggested they were no ordinary group. Judging by their movements, they seemed to be around Chunin level in strength. Seeing this, Tekka was puzzled. Normally, when encountering allies, they would go over and greet them, right? Shizue gently shook his head and explained, the only Hidden Leaf village shinobi on Hidden Cloud's village front lines are either support squads like ours or defensive squads stationed at the front. Neither type of ninja would be moving so casually. Unless I'm mistaken, this group is likely a Hidden Cloud unit that has infiltrated the Land of Fire. After hearing Shizue's analysis, Tekka's expression became grim. The three of them exchanged glances before activating their Sharingan and stepping out from the cover of the bushes. At that moment, the enemy squad also noticed them. The instant they saw the Sharingan, their faces turned pale, and without hesitation, they turned and fled. They had only just been assigned the mission to infiltrate the Land of Fire, but they were unlucky enough to encounter Uchiha shinobi. The Uchiha, with their innate Sharingan, were nearly invincible in one-on-one combat at the Chunin and lower levels. The Sharingan's Ganjutsu made it dangerous to even look them in the eye, and its dynamic vision gave Uchiha shinobi a significant edge in taijutsu. On top of that, their Uchiha bloodline endowed them with considerable chakra reserves. The Uchiha were often regarded as perfect shinobi with no apparent weaknesses. Additionally, the disguises the enemy squad wore might fool regular Hidden Leaf village ninjas, but not Uchiha or Hyuga shinobi. The bloodline of their dujutsu, eye techniques, significantly enhanced their perception abilities, making it nearly impossible to deceive them. As the suspected Hidden Cloud squad attempted to flee, Shizue and his comrades exchanged glances, each selecting a target. In a flash, they vanished from their positions. Tekka and Yakumo activated their Sharingan Ganjutsu, immediately trapping two Cloud Ninja in illusions, rendering them motionless. As for the Chunin squad leader, he stood no chance against Shizue. With a single strike severing his Achilles tendon, Shizue captured him effortlessly. The entire skirmish was over in less than half a minute. After such a swift victory, Tekka boasted, they say Hidden Cloud's village is the second most powerful village after Hidden Leaf village, but these Cloud ninjas aren't much of a deal. Fighting the bloodline limit shinobi of the Hidden Mist was far more exciting. Shizue smiled slightly but chose not to burst Tekka's bubble. Their squad consisted of Jonin with fully matured 3 Tomoe Sharingan. Unless they encountered legendary figures like the Sannin or the Kage, they could hold their own in most battles, especially against mere Chunin. Approaching the captured Cloud Ninja, Shizue used Ganjutsu to control the squad leader, who had been attempting to commit suicide. However, during the interrogation, Shizue's expression became serious. This wasn't just any Cloud Ninja squad, they were members of Hidden Cloud's villages Anbu, and their minds had been sealed with a forbidden jutsu that erased vital information. Forcibly removing this seal would destroy their brains. Tekka frowned. Can we extract any intel? Shizue nodded grimly. The squad leader's mind is sealed. It'll be impossible to crack in a short time. The others likely have similar seals. Upon hearing this, Tekka raised a kunai, ready to stab one of the prisoners through the heart. But just as he was about to strike, one of the cloud ninja broke free from the Ganjutsu and shouted, "Don't kill me. I don't have any seals. I know some important information." Tekka glared at him impatiently. "Tell us, and if the information is useful, we might let you live." Before the cloud ninja could speak further, Shishui immediately used his Sharingan to read his memories directly. After processing the intel, Shishui's face turned grave. "Tekka, Yakumo, we need to find Jiraiya-sama and Commander Fugaku immediately. The Two-Tails Jinchuriki, Ujito, has already infiltrated the Land of Fire." As soon as these words left his mouth, the Uchiha squad's expressions changed, and they quickened their pace. 3 hours later, Shishui arrived at the front-line command center. Inside, only a few people were present: Jiraiya, the front-line commander, Fugaku Uchiha, the deputy commander, and the clan heads of the Inoshikacho trio, Shikaku Nara, Choza Akimaki, and Inoichi Yamanaka. Seeing Shishui enter with such a serious expression, Fugaku immediately asked, "Shishui, is there an urgent matter to report?" Without wasting any time, Shishui relayed the information they had extracted. Upon hearing that the Two-Tails Jinchuriki had infiltrated the Land of Fire, Jiraiya, Fugaku, and the other leaders' faces all turned grim. For Fugaku and the Inoshikacho trio, dealing with a Jinchuriki wouldn't be impossible. The secret techniques of the Inoshikacho were powerful enough to hold their own against Kage-level opponents in the short term, and the Uchiha had plenty of skilled jonin with fully developed Sharingan who could join the fight. However, this was only true if they had prior preparation. In a sudden encounter, they would likely be overwhelmed. The most terrifying aspect of a Jinchuriki was their destructive power. If the Two-Tails fired a tailed beast bomb at a city within the Land of Fire, the devastation would be catastrophic. Though the likelihood of such an event was low, they couldn't afford to dismiss the possibility. Hidden Leaf Village currently lacked a Jinchuriki of their own to balance the scales, making this a highly asymmetric conflict. At this point, Chosa and Inoichi turned their gazes toward Jiraiya. All their hopes rested on him, as he was the only one in the camp who could face a Jinchuriki in one-on-one combat. If Jiraiya could step in and neutralize the threat of the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, the situation would be resolved quickly. During the last Shinobi World War, Orochimaru had managed to assassinate Hidden Cloud's village's Eight-Tails Jinchuriki, which had turned the tide of battle in Hidden Leaf Village's favor. Jiraiya looked down at the report, deep in thought. During the war with Hidden Stone's village, he fought against the Four-Tails and Five-Tails Jinchuriki multiple times. Based on his experiences back then, neither he nor Minato could defeat them in their full-tailed beast forms. The reason was simple: while they could suppress the Jinchuriki, they couldn't penetrate the defenses of a fully transformed tailed beast. As the battle dragged on, they would run out of chakra and lose the advantage. It wasn't until Minato developed the Rasengan, inspired by the principles of the tailed beast bomb, that they gained a fighting chance against Jinchuriki in direct combat. Now, several years had passed, and Jiraiya's strength had improved considerably. With the aid of the Toad Elders, Fukasaku and Shima, he could enter Sage Mode, which further boosted his power. Facing a young Jinchuriki like Ujito wouldn't be too difficult. But the pressure on Hidden Cloud's village front wasn't just from the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. There was also the fearsome duo known as the AB combo. A was the fourth Raikage, A. In his early 30s, A possessed strength and chakra reserves comparable to a tailed beast. Meanwhile, B was Killer B, the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki, whose power was on par with that of the Five Kage. Compared to the teenage Ujito, these two were the real backbone that empowered Hidden Cloud's village to dare to wage war. Jiraiya couldn't think of anyone in the Shinobi world capable of matching the AB combo, unless Tsunade and Orochimaru were willing to team up again to recreate the glory of the Sannin. With that thought, Jiraiya sighed lightly, uncertain of how to face the current challenging situation. Perhaps they could only wait for the old man or Orochimaru to arrive with reinforcements, otherwise, this frontline camp wouldn't hold out much longer. Shikaku saw through Jiraiya's thoughts and spoke slowly. "Lord Jiraiya, you must remain here at the command center to prevent the fourth Raikage from launching a surprise attack. You won't have the opportunity to deal with the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. For now, we can only report this information to the third Hokage and request additional reinforcements." Shikaku's suggestion was sound, and it garnered agreement from Jiraiya and the others. Their main objective was to stabilize the front line and keep the conflict as close to the border as possible. Once the other forces arrived, they could counterattack Hidden Cloud's village. After hearing Shikaku's proposal, Fugaku frowned, his gaze shifting repeatedly over the sand table and the map. Shikaku truly was from a military strategist family, his advice was prudent. As long as they could solidify the front line, Hidden Cloud's village would eventually seek peace talks if they couldn't achieve any significant victories. After all, wars are fought for gains, not merely to vent frustrations. However, this strategy was not favorable for the Uchiha. The Uchiha needed accomplishments. They required impressive achievements to alter the villagers' perceptions of them and to gain more influence through their contributions to the war. If they secured victory in this manner, the Uchiha would receive no credit at all. Should they maintain stability and ultimately miss the opportunity, or should they strive to seize a slim chance for themselves? After much contemplation, Fugaku had found his answer. He took a deep breath and said to Jiraiya, "Lord Jiraiya, Shikaku, leave the task of capturing the Two-Tails Jinchuriki to the Uchiha. We will capture Yujitonya alive and use her as leverage in negotiations with Hidden Cloud's village." The moment Fugaku made this declaration, Jiraiya and Shikaku turned to him with surprised expressions. Jiraiya couldn't help but caution him, "Fugaku, defeating a Jinchuriki isn't simple, and capturing one alive is even more challenging. Are you really willing to take on this task?" Fugaku nodded slightly and replied, "Don't worry, Jiraiya. Although the Jinchuriki is powerful, she fears the Sharingan Genjutsu. In front of the Uchiha, she won't be a threat." Upon hearing this, Shishui's expression changed slightly. Why was Fugaku taking on such a task? Not to mention that the clan had never fought a Jinchuriki before. The Sharingan could suppress tailed beasts, but it couldn't completely neutralize a Jinchuriki. Fugaku paused briefly before continuing, "Furthermore, as long as she's within the Land of Fire, the safety of its citizens is at risk. The Uchiha will not allow this situation to continue." Seeing Fugaku's resolute demeanor, Jiraiya didn't want to dampen the morale of the meeting. Sticking to the principle of steady and careful planning, Jiraiya reminded him, "While I entrust the task of dealing with the Two-Tails intrusion to you, I won't make this mission public. It's okay if it isn't completed. If you do succeed, I will certainly commend you to the old man. Don't worry, Lord Jiraiya. The Uchiha will definitely capture the Jinchuriki alive." With that, Fugaku walked toward Shishui, intending to discuss strategies for capturing the Two-Tails Jinchuriki immediately. Witnessing this exchange, Nara Shikaku had a look that suggested he was watching a fool. He couldn't fathom why the Uchiha would take on such a mission. Didn't they realize how poor their standing was within the village? Even if they succeeded in capturing the Jinchuriki, it wouldn't benefit the Uchiha much. After all, if the Sharingan could control the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, controlling the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki wouldn't be a stretch either. This could potentially lead to the Uchiha being blamed for the previous Nine-Tails incident. If they failed, their reputation would suffer even further. Couldn't they see that being appointed as deputy commander was merely placing the blame on them? Shaking his head inwardly, Shikaku chose not to voice his concerns. The Uchiha's power struggles with the Hokage's faction had nothing to do with him. As the leader of the military strategist clan, he understood that the best strategy was to stay neutral. That way, he could always position himself on the winning side. Chapter 173, Logistics. In Shikaku's view, while Fugaku was indeed a capable deputy commander, his responsibilities were limited to overseeing patrols, reconnaissance, and defensive tasks on the front lines. The authority to assign tasks was significant, but it often involved doing things that would upset others, much like the duties of a security force. If the Uchiha were to act as arrogantly as they had in the past, deliberately assigning their clan members to safer and easier positions, it would surely cause dissatisfaction among the lower-ranked shinobi and further diminish the Uchiha's influence. Conversely, if the Uchiha were to take the lead, the intense conditions on the battlefield against Hidden Cloud's village would undoubtedly result in heavy casualties for them. Unless the Uchiha could endure significant losses and successfully capture the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, they would again find themselves at a disadvantage in the power struggle between the higher-ups and their clan. After Fugaku left the command room with Shishui, discussions continued among the others in the room. After addressing the emergency situation of the Two-Tails Jinchuriki infiltrating the Land of Fire, Jiraiya and Shikaku shifted their focus to strategic considerations. From the existing reconnaissance reports, it was clear that the invading forces from Hidden Cloud's village numbered around 4,000, launching their attack from the Land of Water and the eastern coastline of the Land of Fire. In the Land of Water, Hidden Cloud's village was primarily advancing with a large contingent, while the Hidden Hot Water village within its borders, despite having signed a treaty with Hidden Leaf village, had no real capability for resistance and could only be slaughtered at will. Meanwhile, the enemy along the eastern coastline consisted of smaller units conducting raids. Currently, Jiraiya was mainly responsible for the front lines in the Land of Water, while the Uchiha were tasked with defending against smaller enemy incursions and conducting activities within the Land of Water. After a thorough discussion, Jiraiya and the others had nearly finalized their upcoming strategic deployment. At this moment, Nara Shikaku took out a report and said to Jiraiya, aside from the imminent pressure from Hidden Clouds Village, there's something else that requires your attention. What is it? Jiraiya asked, puzzled. Shikaku handed the report to Jiraiya and continued, there's a problem with logistics. Our food reserves and military rations can only sustain us for 2 weeks, while strategic supplies like kunai, shuriken, and explosive tags can last a maximum of 3 days. Moreover, as the war continues, medical supplies will also face shortages. Only 3 days left? We never lacked these before. The old man promised me he would provide sufficient funding. Jiraiya's lips twitched, and his head began to ache. He had previously served as the commander on the front lines against Hidden Stones Village, but he had never faced a shortage of supplies. How could Hidden Leaf Village lack these strategic resources? Seemingly sensing Jiraiya's thoughts, Shikaku spoke with a hint of resignation. Lord Jiraiya, that was the past, this is the present. After the Third Shinobi World War, everyone in the village believed that wars wouldn't break out easily again, so they reduced their orders for weapon production. Additionally, the peace led to a drop in weapon prices, so no one is producing kunai or explosive tags anymore. It's not a matter of money or procurement capability. Upon hearing this, Jiraiya scratched his head and asked Shikaku, is there a way to solve the supply shortage? Shikaku nodded slightly and said, there are 2 possible solutions. First, we need the village to quickly produce weapons and send them to the front lines. Second, we can only seek aid from other shinobi villages to procure military supplies. Who would sell supplies to Hidden Leaf Village? Jiraiya fell into thought and quickly recalled Hidden Rain Village led by Yahiko and the others. Given his relationship with them, procuring supplies from Hidden Rain Village should be relatively easy. But Jiraiya was unsure how to approach his disciples about it. Did this mean that in order for Hidden Leaf Village to achieve victory in this war, the master would have to procure a large amount of military equipment? Shikaku noticed Jiraiya's hesitation and said slowly, Lord Jiraiya, have you thought of a solution? Jiraiya nodded slightly and then replied, Hidden Rain Village, which has been in a constant state of readiness, should have accumulated quite a bit of military supplies. However, I'm not sure if I can convince them to sell military resources, since they are merely the heirs. The true leader of Hidden Rain Village is still Hanzo of the Salamander. Hearing this, Shikaku smiled and said, since Lord Jiraiya is reluctant to speak, I can write a letter on your behalf. As long as it gets to them, that should suffice. Jiraiya sighed softly, I guess we'll have to do it that way. After Fugaku and Shizue left the command room, they immediately headed towards the Uchiha camp. Shizue gradually came to a halt and looked at Fugaku's back, puzzled. Fugaku-sama, why are you so eager to take on the task of capturing the Two-Tails Jinchuriki? Fugaku glanced at Shizue and replied, of course, it's to protect the village. Additionally, I'm preparing for the elections after the war. I plan to follow the 4th Hokage's example and use my military achievements to become Hokage. Shizue fell silent. He couldn't find any reason to refute Fugaku. Fugaku was acting for the village and for the clan. If the Uchiha could truly become Hokage through contributions and the trust of the villagers, it would not be a bad outcome. However, after all this time, he couldn't forget what Byakuya had said, and he felt very conflicted and lost. He didn't know whether to believe in his clan and the village or in Byakuya's prophecy. The former was his faith, supporting him through over 10 years, while the latter was the brutal reality. Seeing Shizue lost in thought, Fugaku was surprised but didn't think much of it. Though Shizue was one of the clan's top geniuses, his age meant he hadn't experienced significant setbacks, which was likely why he continued to oppose Fugaku's views within the village. As time passed, Shizue would eventually understand Fugaku's good intentions. Everything he did was for the Uchiha, and he felt no shame in that. Upon reaching the Uchiha camp, they found only about 10 Uchiha shinobi present, with the rest still on their way and not expected to gather for a few more days. Nevertheless, the impatient Fugaku announced his decision to everyone. After a lively discussion, all the Uchiha shinobi present agreed with this decision. However, there was an ongoing debate over who would pursue the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. After pondering for a moment, Fugaku looked at Shizue, Tekka, and others, saying, Shizue, the task of capturing the Two-Tails Jinchuriki will be assigned to you. Once you gather information, inform us immediately. Upon hearing this command, Shizue initially thought Fugaku was targeting him. However, there were only about a dozen Jonin in the clan who had awakened the 3 Tomoe Sharingan, and he was one of the top among them. Such a dangerous task could only be entrusted to him. Hopefully, nothing unexpected will happen along the way. Shizue thought to himself. Chapter 174, Financial Report of Hidden Rain Village. 3 months had passed since Hidden Clouds Village initiated its war. During these 3 months, Hidden Leaf Village and Cloud engaged in numerous battles on the front lines. Thanks to the combined efforts of Jiraiya, one of the legendary 3 ninjas, and many elite shinobi from various clans, Hidden Leaf Village barely managed to stop the offensive of the 4th Raikage and Killer Bee, preventing the Cloud forces from advancing further into the Land of Fire. On the eastern coastal battlefield, leveraging the power of bloodline users, Hidden Leaf Village achieved considerable success, holding back Cloud's elite troops at the coastline and launching flank attacks. Surprisingly, the bloodline limit that shone brightly on the Cloud battlefield was not the Uchihas Sharingan but rather the Hyuga clan's Byakugan. The Byakugan's range extended for over 10 kilometers, allowing for effective strategy formulation to prevent Cloud forces from landing. Moreover, the Byakugan's ability to see chakra pathways gave the Hyuga ninjas a significant advantage in combat. With their family's secret technique, the Gentle Fist, they could often defeat shinobi of equal rank swiftly, and even when facing multiple enemies, they only faced slight disadvantages. The rise of the Byakugan led the ninjas in the camp to admire the depth of the Hyuga clan, while simultaneously derailing Fugaku's plans for military merit and rising in rank. This development also sparked hostility from the Uchiha toward the Hyuga. Both clans began debating which was the true strongest jutsu technique in the village, the dynamic vision of the Sharingan or the penetrating capability of the Byakugan. Jiraiya watched the Uchiha and Hyuga squabble but was too preoccupied to deal with such trivial matters. Firstly, since the Senju clan integrated into Hidden Leaf Village, the Uchiha and Hyuga had been vying for the title of the strongest ninja clan. Secondly, the situation on the front lines was not as smooth as anticipated. Although he had led the troops to resist the attacks from Hidden Cloud's village, the Land of Hot Water had fallen into Cloud's hands. If the current situation continued, the Land of Hot Water would eventually become Cloud's possession, which might be Hidden Cloud's village's original strategic goal. However, that was something the old man absolutely could not accept. There had to be buffer countries between Hidden Leaf Village and the other major ninja villages, otherwise, the pressure on the borders would be immense. Doubling the existing number of ninjas was not a feasible option. Apart from this was the logistical issue. Ever since Shikaku's letter was sent to Hidden Rain Village, military supplies had kept pace with consumption. However, the quantity of supplies needed for the war exceeded his expectations. The old man had recently begun complaining about financial issues, urging him to be more frugal. If this continued, the village would be unable to produce enough cash for payments and would have to defer payments temporarily, hoping to settle them after receiving war reparations. One troubling matter after another left Jiraiya increasingly frustrated, growing to dislike the Hokage position even more. As a frontline commander, he was already overwhelmed with so many responsibilities. Becoming Hokage would mean spending 24 hours a day in an office. It was simply a cage that restricted a ninja's freedom. Meanwhile, a monthly high-level meeting was taking place within Hidden Rain Village. Once everyone was seated, Yahiko took a deep breath and said, "It has been 3 months since Hidden Cloud's village launched its attack on Hidden Leaf Village. Although our Hidden Rain Village hasn't directly participated in the war, we have been significantly affected. Firstly, the trade routes to the Land of Fire have been disrupted. Many wandering ninjas have taken advantage of the situation to attack merchant caravans, causing considerable trouble for the village. Secondly, the orders from Hidden Leaf Village have put a lot of pressure on our village's production." At this point, Yahiko deliberately paused, his expression grave. Seeing this, Nagato felt a sense of foreboding rise within him. Did this mean the village would be drawn into this battlefield? However, Byakuya remained calm since he understood the village's situation and was looking forward to Yahiko's next remarks. At this moment, Yahiko glanced at Conan, who immediately took out the financial report and, with a blank expression, said, "In the past 2 months, the village's financial income has increased several times as we've earned what we would typically make in several years. If the war continues, we could earn even more." Hearing this, Nagato asked, somewhat confused, "Isn't it a good thing for the village to make money?" "Yahiko, why do you look unhappy? With this money, the village can develop and build up significantly. If we can fully construct the water conservancy projects within the Land of Rain, the children won't have to go hungry anymore." Byakuya patted Nagato on the back and chuckled. Yahiko is conflicted inside. He doesn't know whether to continue the arms trade because it involves the organization's principles. Yahiko's dream is world peace. He wants to facilitate a treaty between Cloud and Leaf to achieve that peace. But the profits from selling arms and medical supplies in Hidden Rain Village are too substantial. This goes against the organization's ideals, yet we have to do it to develop the organization. After listening to Byakuya's analysis, Nagato understood Yahiko's mental state. However, he had long moved beyond Yahiko's ideals and developed his own understanding. After gathering his thoughts, Nagato spoke up, "Yahiko, I think you don't need to be so conflicted. Our capabilities are still limited since till now, we can only operate within Hidden Rain Village. Besides, we are selling to Hidden Leaf Village, which didn't initiate this war. Everything we do is for world peace. Well said, fam. Nagato's statement prompted by Akaya to applaud. As expected from the original Pain, who brought suffering to the world in later years, he could present the arms trade as something noble, claiming that Hidden Rain Village sold arms for peace. However, these platitudes weren't what mattered most. What truly counted was securing tangible funds. If possible, Akaya intended to prolong the war as long as possible, allowing Leaf and Cloud to bleed each other dry and even sell off core interests. For example, Hidden Leaf Village's bloodline limits and secret techniques, as well as Hidden Cloud's Village's body enhancement techniques and chakra application skills. But this situation couldn't last long. The very fact that Hidden Leaf Village had to issue IOUs for arms trade indicated that they had little war potential left, and the same was likely true for Hidden Cloud's village. Next, it would be the Akatsuki's turn to make a move. With this thought in mind, Akaya turned to Yahiko and said, "Yahiko, Nagato is right as we are on the side of justice. However, relying solely on the arms trade isn't wise. When the time is right, let's step in to mediate this battlefield." Akaya's words fell like a boulder into a lake, stirring up great waves in Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato's hearts. This Akaya, this murder child, who loves chaos and bloodbath, was talking about mediation. They looked at Akaya with incredulous eyes and then asked in confusion, "Really? Akaya, you won't take the opportunity to profit but instead choose to mediate this war?" Akaya nodded, "Why of course. After all, I've always loved peace." Chapter 175, Akaya's prophecy. Despite harboring doubts about Akaya's motives, Yahiko took the initiative to ask, "Akaya, when would be the right time to encourage Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Clouds Village to hold peace talks?" Akaya gently shook his head and said earnestly, "Yahiko, I know you're anxious, but please be patient. Let me explain the cause and effect of the situation first." Yahiko nodded slightly, and Konan and Nagato also displayed eager expressions, eager for knowledge. After gathering his thoughts, Akaya turned to Yahiko and asked, "Why do you think Hidden Clouds Village chose to attack Hidden Leaf Village?" "To seize control of the Land of Water and the Land of Fire, and to claim the title of the strongest ninja village," Yahiko replied. Akaya nodded and continued, "Then why does Hidden Clouds Village dare to attack Hidden Leaf Village? Aren't they afraid of a counterattack from Hidden Leaf Village?" Yahiko pondered for a moment and answered, "It's because Minato-senpai died during the Ninetales incident. If Minato-senpai and Gushina were alive, Hidden Clouds Village definitely wouldn't be brave enough to attack. Then why has Hidden Leaf Village faced attacks from other ninja villages during previous ninja world wars?" Upon hearing this, Yahiko fell into deep thought. He vaguely sensed what Akaya was implying but couldn't quite grasp it. Seeing this, Akaya reflected on the situation and said, "The reason Hidden Leaf Village and the Land of Fire have been attacked in past ninja world wars is simple: their land is too rich. The Land of Fire occupies nearly 60% of the most valuable land in the ninja world, far surpassing other great nations. This fertile land was secured by the first Hokage and the Shura of the ninja world. With the strength of the first Hokage, he could suppress all ambitious individuals while Hidden Leaf Village relied on the Land of Fire's superior conditions to continuously harvest resources from surrounding great nations, growing ever stronger. However, all of this was built upon the foundation of the first Hokage's life. Once the first Hokage died, wars over the Land of Fire would erupt. Through one victory after another, Hidden Leaf Village barely managed to retain its territory, maintaining a fragile balance. But, oh well, the Ninetales incident shattered that balance, allowing Hidden Clouds Village, which had preserved considerable strength during the last Ninja World War, to challenge Hidden Leaf Village once again. However, while Hidden Clouds Village has the strength to challenge Hidden Leaf Village, I don't believe they will succeed. "Why?" Konan asked curiously. She had always been very attentive to finances but knew little about the strengths and histories of the various ninja villages. Akaya smiled and replied, "Although Hidden Clouds Village has top-tier powerhouses like the 4th Raikage and the 2 Tails and 8 Tails Jinchuriki, the quality and quantity of their upper ninja can't compare to Hidden Leaf Villages. Once it enters a war of attrition, no ninja village can outlast Hidden Leaf Village unless Hidden Leaf Village punches its own guts with internal strives." But Hidden Leaf Village had already experienced the Ninetales incident. Konan thought inwardly, wondering if Akaya was getting off track since they were discussing how to promote peace between Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Leaf Village. Noticing the expressions on their faces, Akaya continued, "To return to the main topic, the reason Hidden Clouds Village initiated this invasion is that they have the strength to attack Hidden Leaf Village and seek to claim the title of the strongest ninja village. In my view, we have only 3 possible ways to stop this war. The first is to assist Hidden Clouds Village in completely defeating the Land of Fire, swallowing the Land of Water and parts of the Land of Fire." Upon hearing this, Yahiko shook his head, "We cannot assist Hidden Clouds Village." Byakuya then raised his second finger. The second option is for us to join Hidden Leaf Village as mercenaries. With our accumulated strength over the years, we could help Hidden Leaf Village defeat Hidden Cloud's village. Nagato and Conan exchanged glances. The second option sounded appealing. By joining Hidden Leaf Village as mercenaries, they could help resist Hidden Cloud's village's invasion while also earning a considerable sum of money to fund the development of the Land of Rain. However, they were still eager to hear the third option, so they all turned to Byakuya. Byakuya revealed a sly smile and raised a third finger, saying meaningfully, "The third option is for us to declare war on both Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Cloud's village simultaneously. As long as we create a common enemy for Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Cloud's village, and push them to the brink of destruction, they will come to understand each other and move towards peace." At these words, the atmosphere in the office instantly became tense and subtle. Byakuya's last suggestion was indeed a good one, but the difficulty of implementation was quite high. After all, how could Hidden Rain Village possibly contend with both Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Cloud's village at the same time? If they had that capability, they would have intervened to stop the war long ago. Seeing the others fall into silence, Byakuya chuckled, "I was just joking. What I really mean is that we should wait until Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Cloud's village have exhausted themselves before we intervene in the war. And as for the specific timing, I don't know yet. We'll wait for Jiraiya to seek help on his own." Upon hearing this, Yahiko and the others sighed softly. Byakuya's approach would indeed maximize the interests of the Village of Rain, and they were no longer the hot-blooded youths they once were. As passionate youths, they now realize they need to balance their dreams with reality. However, was it too cruel to wait for their Jiraiya-sensei to come begging for help? After all, he had taught them for 3 years and was like a father to them. At that moment, Yahiko suddenly changed expression and looked toward the door. A puff of smoke appeared at the office entrance, and a young toad tumbled out. This toad looked quite youthful, still retaining a tadpole's tail. Upon seeing Yahiko, it opened its mouth and spat out a scroll, then released itself from the summoning technique. Watching the scene unfold, the ninjas present did not stop the toad from leaving. They all understood that the toad was Jiraiya's summoning creature, coming from Mount Mayabaku, and the message it delivered was undoubtedly related to Jiraiya. Byakuya took a few extra glances at the toad, mentally noting its chakra signature. He also felt curious about whether the toad knew of his secret actions, considering that the toad was quite influential in the original timeline. However, the predictions of the toad sage were always vague, only offering ambiguous keywords. A ninja with sky blue eyes is the child of prophecy, pointing occasionally to Nagato with the Rinnegan, then to Minato and Naruto. He thought to himself that he could also come up with some cryptic sayings. The boy with the divine bloodline will ultimately save the world. The chosen one who saves the world is not a summoning beast or a tailed beast, but a living human. While Byakuya mused to himself, Yahiko had already picked up the scroll from the ground. After reading the content of the letter, Yahiko's mouth twitched slightly, his expression turning nuanced as he looked at Byakuya. Noticing the change in Yahiko's expression, Nagato and Conan also leaned in to take a look, and the three of them turned to Byakuya, their faces filled with curiosity. Snapping out of his thoughts, Byakuya noticed their gaze and said in dissatisfaction, "What are you looking at me for? Look at the contents of the letter. Do you expect me to know what it says?" Upon hearing this, Yahiko hesitated, exchanging glances with Nagato and Conan before saying, "Byakuya, you might actually know what's inside. We've finished reading it, and the contents just so happen to respond to your earlier prophecy. Jiraiya-sensei really has come to us for help." Chapter 176, Two Tasks. Byakuya didn't believe the group's excuses and walked over to grab the letter. After quickly reading its contents, his face immediately twitched as he found himself unsure where to even start criticizing it. It really was a distress letter from Jiraiya. The letter was very straightforward. 2 days ago, Hidden Leaf Village's supply line encountered an issue. The military supplies purchased from Hidden Rain Village were intercepted by Hidden Cloud's village ninjas within the borders of the Land of Fire, causing tension on Hidden Leaf Village's battlefront. The Hidden Cloud's village ninjas responsible for the ambush were well off with strength, which led Jiraiya to request protection from Hidden Rain Village to ensure the safety of the supplies. There was nothing wrong with the letter's content, but the irony was that Byakuya had just mentioned Jiraiya would probably seek help. Faced with Yahiko and the others' subtle glances, Byakuya wanted to explain but couldn't find the words. Just moments ago, he had been mocking the old toad Brahmamaru as a fraud, and now, he found himself in the same position. In a flash, he had gone through the stages of doubt, understanding, and becoming one himself. After clearing his throat, Byakuya spoke, "It seems that Jiraiya-sensei has sent a distress letter quite quickly. The conflict between Hidden Cloud's village and Hidden Leaf Village must be more intense than I had imagined. I believe it won't be long before the war between Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Cloud's village comes to an end." "Really?" Conan asked with anticipation, as in her mind, Byakuya's words were not speculations or analysis but rather predictions of the future. Feeling awkward, Byakuya set the letter down. At this moment, Yahiko, noticing Byakuya's discomfort, quickly chimed in, when the war ends is still unknown. For now, let's focus on Jiraiya-sensei's request for help. Do you guys agree or disagree with his request? Conan and Nagato exchanged glances and then nodded, saying, we both agree to support Jiraiya-sensei. Byakuya slowly added, it's fine to support Hidden Leaf Village, but that comes with an additional price. Aside from the task of escorting supplies, we should ask if he needs ninjas to assassinate Hidden Cloud's village's top fighters. Seeing that everyone was in agreement to support Hidden Leaf Village, Yahiko nodded slightly and then asked Byakuya, Byakuya, do you really plan to send our people to assassinate Hidden Cloud's village ninjas? Byakuya, unconcerned, responded, of course. Over the past few days, I've recruited quite a few strong rogue ninjas under my command. This war is the perfect opportunity to test and sharpen them, allowing them to prove their worth. After thinking it over, Yahiko said, be cautious. I know you're very powerful, but remember, there are always stronger people out there. In the ninja world, you never know when a new Kage-level powerhouse might emerge. I'll be careful. You can respond to Hidden Leaf Village, and I'll go back to make the preparations. With that, Byakuya left Hidden Rain Village's office. After returning to the Akatsuki base, Byakuya used his ring to summon the outer members. Currently, there are not many outer members. Aside from Byakuya, who was the leader, there were only Hanzo, Kakazu, and Sasori. The reason the group was limited to just 4 wasn't because Akatsuki lacked enough Jonin-level members. It was because Byakuya held a philosophy of preferring quality over quantity. The outer members would eventually be tasked with capturing the tailed beasts, so if they didn't even have the strength of elite Jonin, they'd be better off doing logistics work. However, recruiting ninjas at the elite Jonin level was no simple task. At that level, these elite Jonin were just a step away from Kage-level strength. After all, both Kages and elite Jonin fell under the Jonin classification. In Byakuya's memory, the original Akatsuki members had almost all been recruited. Nagato and Conan, being Akatsuki's top leaders, were already accounted for. Kakazu and Sasori had also been recruited. As for the others like Hitachi Uchiha, Hidan, Deidara, Kisame Hoshigaki, and Zabuza Momoki, some of them were likely still under 10 years old and might not have even graduated from their ninja academies. Others were still quietly serving in Hidden Mist villages and Bu, which was under Tobi's control, and would eventually become part of his team. Byakuya didn't have the time or inclination to meddle in that right now. If Byakuya wanted to recruit strong ninjas in a short time, he might have to consider alternative methods. Shizue is a good option, and wandering ninjas like Shinno and Hiroko, who move between various countries, are also solid choices. Their abilities should be around the Jonin level, and with a bit of training, they could become reliable combat forces. 2 days later, Byakuya received 2 pieces of information. The first was from Hidden Rain Village Tower. Hidden Leaf Village had decided to hire Akatsuki's ninjas to deal with Hidden Cloud's village's ninjas. The second message came from Kabuto Yakushi. After a few months of training, Kabuto had become a root ninja and had left Hidden Leaf Village to officially begin his missions. Both pieces of news were extremely useful, especially the one from Kabuto, which pleased Byakuya immensely. Although Kabuto was a war orphan, his talent wasn't any less than Kakashi's, particularly in medical research. His abilities were acknowledged by both Tsunade and Orochimaru. With such potential, whether Kabuto eventually rose to the upper ranks of Hidden Leaf Village or was taken away by Orochimaru, he would be an excellent spy candidate, allowing Byakuya to continuously gather intelligence. After destroying the intelligence scroll, Byakuya went to Akatsuki's training ground. Hanzo, Kakazu, and Sasori had been waiting for quite some time, their eyes fixed on Byakuya as they awaited his orders. Without any small talk, Byakuya directly said, the village has accepted Hidden Leaf Village's request for 2 tasks, escorting supplies sold to Hidden Leaf Village and assassinating Jonin from Hidden Cloud's village. This mission is very difficult and will have to rely on skilled fighters. So to get to the point. Do you want to take on the task of escorting the supplies, or will you join me in hunting Hidden Cloud's village ninjas? After hearing the mission details, the 3 of them pondered for a moment. Hanzo smiled as he walked over to Byakuya's side, saying with a chuckle, I'm getting old and don't want to stray too far from the village, so I'll take the task of escorting the supplies. Without hesitation, Kakazu and Sasori went for the other option, we choose to assassinate the Hidden Cloud's village ninjas. Their reasons for choosing the assassination over escorting supplies varied. Kakazu, being a true bounty hunter, didn't care about the specific mission details. Aside from the mission targets and ninjas who stood in his way, he rarely dealt with other ninjas. Compared to escorting supplies, which didn't have much profit, because he preferred assassination missions. The reason was simple: killing people paid much more than escorting. Sasori's reasoning was even more straightforward. His parents had been killed by Hidden Leaf Village ninjas, so he could never help Hidden Leaf Village, even if it was just escorting supplies. By comparison, participating in the mission to hunt down Hidden Cloud's village ninjas was more appealing. At the very least, he could collect materials for making puppets. Byakuya had no objections to their decisions and nodded in agreement. Chapter 177, Hidden Leaf Village's bounty list. After assigning Hanzo to the task of escorting the supplies, Byakuya left Hidden Rain Village with Kakazu and Sasori. Both of them were long used to Byakuya's unusual behavior, like giving orders to his teacher. Byakuya had always been eccentric, but he consistently led them in the right direction. Most importantly, although Byakuya called Hanzo teacher, the relationship between the two wasn't necessarily that of a master and disciple. Looking at the current situation in Hidden Rain Village, Hanzo no longer held the title of leader or wielded any power. The only thing left was his reputation as the demigod. As for how the once mighty demigod had become a retired elder in Akatsuki, that was something only Byakuya could explain. After all, Byakuya was the true ruler behind both Akatsuki and Hidden Rain Village, and nearly everything he predicted had come true. After half a day of travel, the three of them left the borders of the Land of Rain. Once they were out of the dark and damp environment, Sasori's mood improved noticeably. The climate of the Land of Rain was terrible for puppet making and maintenance. He much preferred the dry environment of the desert. Byakuya took 3 Hidden Leaf Village headbands and Akatsuki uniforms from his backpack and handed them to the other two. Kakazu and Sasori took the headbands and cloaks with puzzled expressions. Weren't they Akatsuki ninjas? Shouldn't they wear the Hidden Rain Village headbands if anything? Why would they wear Hidden Leaf Village headbands while donning the Akatsuki cloak? With a serious expression, Byakuya explained, "We are mercenaries hired by Hidden Leaf Village, so of course, we need to wear Hidden Leaf Village headbands. This is called professionalism. Once we've built a reputation, more people will come to us for jobs." Kakazu thought for a moment, then silently chose to put on the Akatsuki cloak and Hidden Leaf Village headband. Sasori, however, refused to take the Hidden Leaf Village headband, holding firm to his principles. Seeing this, Byakuya didn't force the issue. After putting on his own headband, he opened the bounty list that Hidden Leaf Village had sent. The list was filled with the names of Hidden Cloud's village Jonin. At the top of the list was the 4th Raikage, with a bounty of 200 million ryo, equivalent to more than 30 asumas. Next was Killer B, the Jinchuriki of the 8 Tails, with a bounty of 150 million ryo. Upon seeing the list, Kakazu immediately became interested, his eyes lighting up at the prospect of earning money. After reading the names of the 4th Raikage and Killer B, he said excitedly, "Byakuya, how about we take on the task of assassinating the 4th Raikage? With our combined strength, it's not impossible to succeed. If we do, our reputation will surely spread across the ninja world." Byakuya glanced at Kakazu and said, "Kakazu, I'll allow you to act on your own for this mission. But when you get cornered by the 4th Raikage and Killer B, please don't mention my name." Realizing Byakuya wasn't in favor of his plan, Kakazu's confidence deflated a bit. He had always been an arrogant ninja. Though he failed in his attempt to assassinate the first Hokage, he considered the first Hokage an exception, a monster far beyond the norm. The rest of the ninja world, in his eyes, didn't have such anomalies. But after joining Akatsuki, Kakazu realized how wrong he had been, terribly wrong. Within Akatsuki alone, there were 5 or 6 ninjas on par with him, and even with such strength, Akatsuki still hadn't yet risen to the level of the 5 great ninja villages. Sasori, sensing Kakazu's thoughts, had nothing to add. As the grandson of Chio, an elder of Hidden Sand Village, Sasori knew all too well the true strength of the village. Frankly speaking, Akatsuki was already powerful enough to crush Hidden Sand Village. But Byakuya's ambitions couldn't be satisfied by taking over a single village. Byakuya wanted to control the entire ninja world. After some discussion, Byakuya chose their first target, a Hidden Clouds village Jonin responsible for escorting supplies. His strength would provide a decent warm-up for the group. Once they had locked onto their target, the 3 of them crossed through the Land of Fields and arrived in the Land of Hot Water. On their first day in the Land of Hot Water, Byakuya led the group to one of the most famous tourist spots in the Land of Hot Water, settling into a luxurious hot spring hotel. Relaxing in the outdoor bath, Byakuya seemed perfectly at ease, while Sasori, having temporarily set aside his puppet Hiruko, crouched in the water blowing bubbles, perplexed by Byakuya's reluctance to take the initiative. Kakazu, similarly, couldn't understand why they were wasting time here. Noticing their confusion, Byakuya gave them both a disdainful look. They had come all the way to the Land of Hot Water, how could they not enjoy the hot springs? Besides, Rather than actively hunting for their targets, it was far more efficient to let their enemies come to them. Just as Byakuya predicted, the moment they walked openly into the land of hot water, sporting their Hidden Leaf Village headbands, the Hidden Clouds Village ninjas swarmed toward them like flies attracted to honey. When a group of Hidden Clouds Village ninjas stormed the hot spring hotel with weapons drawn, they found themselves ambushed by Seisaori's puppet army, which had been waiting for them. The well-crafted puppets made short work of the Cloud ninjas, who stood no chance. At that moment, a Hidden Clouds Village Jonin appeared outside the hot spring hotel. With a loud battle cry, the Jonin swiftly used the teleportation jutsu to reach the open-air bath. He grinned as he saw Byakuya and the others lounging lazily in the hot spring. These Hidden Leaf Village ninjas were undoubtedly strong, but they were surrounded by water. As long as he used his lightning style, the electric current would paralyze them all. Then, using his superior physical strength, he'd easily take them down. With this plan in mind, the Hidden Clouds Village Jonin formed hand seals and shouted, "Lightning style, lightning fang." In an instant, crackling lightning fangs formed in his hands, and he hurled them viciously toward the hot spring. Seeing this, Kakazu, who had been resting with his eyes closed, immediately leaped up and countered with his own lightning style. The two lightning techniques collided, exploding into sparks that caused the water in the hot spring to sizzle and pop. In the next moment, the Hidden Clouds Village Jonin was struck by a black rod and fell into the hot spring. As his strength ebbed away, the Jonin looked toward Byakuya, disbelief in his eyes. Byakuya was walking calmly through the electrified water without showing any signs of discomfort. To have a body that could withstand this level of power, such strength was extremely rare, even within Hidden Clouds Village. Only a handful of people in the entire village possessed such physical resilience. What shocked him even more was the thought that Hidden Leaf Village, while not lacking in powerful shinobi, had never mentioned someone of this caliber in their intelligence. Could it be that Hidden Leaf Village had been hiding elites, or perhaps other ninja villages had intervened? As these thoughts swirled in his mind, the Jonin began to consider fleeing. However, he was suddenly impaled by the tail of Seisaori's puppet, Hiruko, immobilizing him completely. As he slipped into unconsciousness, he heard one last sentence. "Seisaori, didn't I tell you to leave him alive?" Without this lead, it will be much harder to track down the other ninjas. Chapter 178, the next target. After hearing Byakuya's reprimand, Seisaori, with a deadpan expression, retorted, "I held back as much as I could. Who would have thought that this ninja, who launched an attack against the three of us, would be so weak? I expected him to be at least as strong as Maki." Seisaori continued. Faced with Seisaori's deflection, Byakuya sighed in frustration. He stepped out of the hot spring and began healing the injured Hidden Clouds Village Jonin. Under the effects of Byakuya's medical ninjutsu, the Jonin gradually regained consciousness. Fearfully, he stared at Byakuya and stammered, "Who are you people? Hidden Leaf Village shouldn't have shinobi like you. Why are you here?" "We're technically Hidden Leaf Village ninjas for now, considering we're still wearing Hidden Leaf Village headbands." "See?" Byakuya replied casually, pointing at his headband. After a brief pause, Byakuya added, "As for why we're here, we're just on vacation. We came to the land of hot water for some relaxation." "What's it got to do with Hidden Clouds Village?" The Hidden Clouds Village Jonin stared at Byakuya, unsure whether he was playing dumb or genuinely oblivious. With the current war between Hidden Leaf Village and Hidden Clouds Village and the fact that the land of hot water was now occupied by Hidden Clouds Village, a group of shinobi proudly displaying Hidden Leaf Village headbands was bound to attract attention. Seeing the Jonin fall silent, Byakuya lost interest in further conversation. "Seisaori, Kakazu, I'm leaving this guy to you. I need all the information he has in half an hour." Seisaori nodded, clearly intrigued to test his new information extracting puppets. Normally, someone hit by Seisaori's puppet Hiruko would be hard-pressed to survive, but this Jonin had held on longer than expected. It was partly due to Byakuya's medical ninjutsu, but also thanks to the Jonin's robust physical condition. Hidden Clouds Village, known for its emphasis on taijutsu and lightning style, produced elite shinobi whose bodies held great experimental value. Seisaori was keen to study him. After watching Seisaori leave, Byakuya exited the hot spring and headed into the study. The hot spring hotel they were staying in was actually one of his own businesses. However, due to Hidden Clouds Village's invasion, normal operations had been disrupted. For now, it would serve as a base for luring in more enemies. Byakuya was confident that more Hidden Clouds Village ninjas would target the hotel. As long as the attackers weren't high-caliber threats like the 4th Raikage or the 8 Tails Jinchuriki, any other Hidden Clouds Village ninja would meet their doom. This confidence stemmed from Byakuya's and his team's strength. Between him, Kakazu, and Seisaori, they were powerful enough to influence the outcome of localized battles. Unless the 5 Kage or a large number of elite shinobi were dispatched, even if they couldn't win outright, they could easily escape. However, excessively weakening Hidden Clouds Village didn't align with Hidden Rain Village's interests. Byakuya needed to find a way to balance the scales, weakening both Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Leaf Village simultaneously. As Byakuya pondered how to undermine Hidden Leaf Village further, a noise came from beneath the floor. Zetsu's head emerged from the ground. The white half of Zetsu, known as Shiro, looked around before addressing Byakuya. Lord Byakuya, here's the intel you requested. I went through a lot of trouble to get this, so you'll need to pay extra. Byakuya sighed in exasperation at Zetsu's demand for more money but tossed over some bills anyway. He found it absurd that Zetsu, of all beings, was asking for payment. What could Zetsu possibly do with money? It seemed like he'd been spending too much time with Kakazu and had picked up his habits. Still, giving money to Zetsu was no different than paying Kakazu. The money wasn't disappearing, it was merely being relocated. Once either of them died, the funds would return to the organization's coffers, essentially back into Byakuya's own hands. Byakuya picked up the intel Zetsu had delivered. The reports were primarily about the Uchiha clan. Interestingly, Zetsu hadn't found Itachi Uchiha in the Uchiha compound, meaning there was no intel on Itachi. The report mostly detailed Fugaku and Shizui. Shizui needed no further elaboration, he was a target Byakuya intended to recruit, though he had yet to fully mature. As for Fugaku, the Uchiha clan leader and father of both Itachi and Sasuke, Byakuya had his reservations. Fugaku struck him as far too indecisive for someone in such a prominent position within the clan. If Fugaku Uchiha had dared to defy the Hokage's orders during the Nine-Tails incident, perhaps he could have changed the Uchiha clan's fate. Besides that, Byakuya found it hard to understand Fugaku's decision to bring his 4-year-old son to the battlefield to kill. One could argue that Itachi's eventual decision to destroy the clan was influenced half by Fugaku and half by a combination of Denzo, Obito, and Shizui. Regarding Fugaku's intel, it mentioned that the elite Jonin had led his clan members into the Land of Hot Water multiple times, attempting to capture isolated Hidden Clouds Village shinobi and destroy their outposts for merit. However, while the ideal is grand, the reality is harsh. Fugaku's missions had more failures than successes. The Uchiha clan was no match for the 4th Raikage, whose speed even surpassed the activation of Genjutsu. After reviewing Fugaku's intel, Byakuya turned to the report on Shizui. In contrast to Fugaku's aggressive pursuit of glory, Shizui was much more cautious. Though he had attacked Hidden Clouds Village fewer times, his success rate was significantly higher. Unfortunately, Shizui seemed overly cautious, he hadn't even used his Mengekyo Sharingan. This made Byakuya wonder if Shizui had truly awakened Koto Umatsukami, the ultimate power of his Sharingan. As Byakuya continued reading, he saw that Shizui was currently leading a group to track down a Two-Tails Jinchuriki. At this, a faint smile appeared on Byakuya's lips, he had finally found a way to further weaken Hidden Leaf Village. With his thought, Byakuya left the study and went to find Kakazu and Sasori, who were in the middle of an interrogation. When Byakuya approached, Kakazu immediately responded, "Byakuya, it'll take more time to extract the intel. This Hidden Clouds Village ninja is more stubborn than we anticipated." Byakuya glanced at the Hidden Clouds Village Jonin undergoing interrogation and said, "I will be leaving the interrogation to you two for now. During this time, focus on self-preservation and don't venture out unnecessarily. I'll be leaving for a few days. We'll meet at the agreed location when I return." Sasori looked puzzled and asked, "Byakuya, where are you going?" With a mysterious smile, Byakuya replied, "I'm going to recruit a new member. We still don't have enough people in the organization. If you two come across any suitable candidates, remember to recruit them for the organization." Byakuya was off to recruit yet another member. Kakazu and Sasori both fell silent, each wondering who Byakuya intended to bring in next. Nevertheless, Byakuya's departure was good news for them, it meant they had more freedom to act. After giving a few more instructions to Kakazu and Sasori, Byakuya wasted no time. He used the teleportation jutsu and disappeared from the spot. Chapter 179, The Trail of the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. Within the Land of Fire, Shizui led his team through the forest at high speed, not to pursue enemies but to flee from their pursuers. Dodging a fireball that brushed past him, Shizui's expression turned grim. Half an hour earlier, while carrying out their mission to track the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, Shizui's team had finally found traces of their target. Just as Shizui was about to report the information to the main force, Yakumo Uchiha launched an attack, forcing Shizui and Tekka to join the assault on the Two-Tails. After a few rounds of battle, the Two-Tails Jinchuriki fell under the influence of Shizui's Sharingan Genjutsu and appeared to be in a deep sleep. However, the Jinchuriki had been faking the effects of the Genjutsu. As they approached, she coordinated with the other Hidden Clouds village ninjas and launched a counterattack. If Shizue hadn't managed to control one of the Hidden Clouds village jonin at a critical moment, the three of them would not have escaped unharmed. Even so, Shizue's team suffered heavy losses. Not only had they lost their ninja cat used for communication, but both Tekka and Yakumo had sustained severe injuries. Without timely aid, they would die from excessive blood loss within hours. Reflecting on the situation, Shizue sighed inwardly, regretting that he hadn't stopped his teammates from attacking the Two Tails earlier and blaming himself for his lack of strength. If he had been stronger, he could have seen through the trap set by the Jinchuriki. Moreover, the intel from the village had definitely been flawed. The Two Tails Jinchuriki was far from an ordinary Jinchuriki. Most would lose their sanity after entering a tailed beast transformation. Yet Yujito, despite her blank eyes, was clearly maintaining her composure. In other words, Yujito was a perfect Jinchuriki, just like the Eight Tails Jinchuriki. There was no time for further contemplation. As Shizue took a sharp turn, a blonde girl appeared in front of him, wearing a mocking smile like a cat toying with a mouse. The blonde girl, dressed in a Hidden Clouds village uniform, was enveloped in the blue, cat-like chakra of a tailed beast. Two faintly visible tails swayed behind her. This girl was none other than Yujito, the Two Tails Jinchuriki, who had been chasing Shizue for some time. Seeing Yujito block his path, Shizue quickly formed hand signs, and over a dozen shadow clones appeared, rushing toward Yujito. Instead of evading, Yujito charged directly at the clones. The violent tailed beast chakra shredded them apart, but Shizue reappeared behind her, swinging his short sword toward her arms. However, the chakra-infused strike only managed to tear through the bandages on her arms, leaving a shallow cut. Witnessing this, Shizue's expression grew tense. He quickly widened the distance, keeping a close eye on Yujito. In terms of pure ninja and taijutsu abilities, he could easily overpower someone like Yujito, who was close in age. But in her tailed beast transformation mode, Yujito surpassed him in both speed and strength. The most troublesome factor was the immense defense and regenerative power granted by the tailed beast chakra. Moreover, the surge of the tailed beast chakra prevented him from bypassing the chakra cloak's defense to directly control Yujito's senses. With all these disadvantages stacked against him, Shizue realized he was no match for Yujito. Even if Tekka and Yakumo joined the fight, the gap between them as jonin and a Jinchuriki was insurmountable. Luckily, it seemed that the tailed beast chakra was affecting Yujito's behavior, gradually making her act more like a feline. Clearly possessing the strength to wipe them all out, Yujito had instead chosen to toy with them slowly, giving them a chance to escape or to fight to the bitter end. With this realization, Shizue quickly formed hand signs, inhaled deeply, and shouted, "Fire style, great fireball jutsu." As soon as he spoke, Shizue spewed a massive fireball from his mouth. The blazing sphere shot across the field, heading straight for Yujito. Once again, Yujito didn't bother to dodge, taking the full force of the great fireball jutsu head-on. Taking advantage of this moment, Shizue immediately followed up with water-style, water dragon jutsu. The combination of the fireball and the water dragon created thick, scorching steam that engulfed the surrounding forest. Using the cover of the steam, Shizue randomly chose a direction and darted into the woods. He had bought his teammates enough time. From here on, the only option was for them to scatter and escape separately, increasing their chances of survival. Yujito emerged from the steam and glanced toward the direction where the Uchiha had disappeared. She licked her hand, relishing the hunt. She loved playing cat and mouse, especially when it involved hunting down young prodigies. If she could capture these young Uchiha and bring them back to her village, she would certainly be rewarded by the fourth Raikage. She'd never have to stay on that lifeless turtle island again, a place so dull that she rarely saw another living soul. It was absolutely mind-numbing. Bringing her thoughts back to the present, Yujito looked behind her and frowned. The group of Anbu tasked with protecting her still hadn't caught up. She wasn't even moving at full speed, yet they were still lagging far behind. Were they really supposed to be protecting her? It felt more like she was the one protecting them. Snorting in contempt, Yujito didn't wait for reinforcements. She picked a random direction and pursued her targets. She didn't care if this was a trap set by Hidden Leaf Village. Either way, she was confident she wouldn't get caught. While her speed might not match the Raikage's explosive bursts, her endurance was on a different level. However, what Yujito failed to realize was that the Anbu hadn't fallen behind due to a lack of speed, they had likely encountered another situation. Once Yujito's figure disappeared into the distance, Byakuya cancelled his Mayfly technique and emerged from underground. A few minutes earlier, he had sensed the flare of chakra in this area and followed the trail of the tailed beast's chakra, arriving just in time to witness Shizue and his team's defeat. He hadn't expected that even with three Uchiha Jonin working together, they couldn't overcome the Cloud Anbu and Yujito, the two-tails Jinchuriki. This made him question the actual combat strength of the Uchiha. But after thinking about it more, it made sense. The three-tomoe Sharingan wasn't as powerful as people imagined. To truly unleash the Sharingan's potential, it depended on the user's talent and whether they had mastered secret techniques like Izanagi or Izanami. Moreover, age played a role. Shisui and the others were still too young, far from reaching their peak. As for comparing them to a three-tomoe Sasuke, that wasn't a fair comparison either. Sasuke's power came from the synergy between the cursed seal and the Sharingan. Bringing his drifting thoughts back in line, Byakuya began pursuing Yujito. This encounter should serve as a trigger for Shisui to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan. Once Shisui gained the Mangekyo, he would finally see the reality of the ninja world and of Hidden Leaf Village. Chapter 180, Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan. After fleeing for over 10 kilometers, Shisui finally found a moment to rest. An hour of high-intensity combat had drained him of nearly all his stamina and chakra. If he pushed himself any further, he risked passing out before even reaching the Hidden Leaf Village camp. He ate a few soldier pills, took a sip of water to regain some strength, and then glanced back in the direction he had come from. Several minutes passed, and he still hadn't heard any signs of pursuit. It seemed that he had successfully escaped from Yujito's chase. Reflecting on the earlier battle, Shisui couldn't help but feel the stark difference in strength between an ordinary Jonin and a Jinchuriki. Had Yujito used the tail beast bomb earlier, he probably wouldn't have even had the chance to flee. No wonder the Nine-Tails attack on the village had caused such massive chaos. However, thoughts of his teammates, Tekka and Yakumo, whose fates were uncertain, left Shisui feeling uneasy. The decision for the three of them to scatter and run had been communicated with just a glance. Yet deep down, Shisui knew that he had harbored selfish thoughts. Tekka and Yakumo weren't as fast as he was. During the pursuit by the Hidden Clouds village ninja, Yujito would surely go after the slower targets, leaving Shisui a better chance to survive. With this realization, Shisui sighed softly, his heart heavy with guilt. He had always claimed to uphold the will of fire, willing to sacrifice his life to protect his comrades. But when it truly came down to a life-or-death situation, he had chosen to run. Even his aspirations to become Hokage and resolve the tensions between the village and the Uchiha clan were the same. He lacked the courage to shoulder that responsibility, instead pushing it onto the clan leader, or even the younger Uchiha, without confronting the problem himself. In this sense, how was he any different from his apathetic clansmen? It was all just empty talk. Leaning against a tree, Shisui pondered for a long time. Then, he glanced again in the direction he had fled from. If he returned now, could he possibly use his life to buy time for his comrades to escape? This thought left him feeling conflicted once more, but eventually, he stood up and began heading back. If he survived today by abandoning his comrades, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Swallowing the remaining soldier pills, Shisui drank a large gulp of water and, while moving swiftly through the forest, began absorbing the energy to replenish his chakra. After several minutes of running at full speed, he followed the lingering chakra traces to a deep canyon. From within the depths of the canyon, sounds of intense battle echoed. A large-scale fight was clearly underway. By sensing the chakra signatures, Shisui could confirm that it was Yakumo battling Yujito, the two-tails Jinchuriki. Taking a deep breath, he used his body flicker technique to arrive above the canyon. Holding his breath, Shisui looked down into the canyon, and in the next moment, his eyes widened in shock. Yujito had already driven a kunai through Yakumo's chest, her face showing a hint of satisfaction. Yet, there was a trace of disappointment in her expression, as if the battle hadn't been quite as exciting as she had hoped. At that moment, Yujito seemed to sense something. She turned her head and looked toward the top of the canyon. Seeing that Shisui had returned, Yujito smiled and mockingly said, "Shisui Uchiha, I wasn't planning to come after you, but you've returned of your own accord. Are you that eager to die?" Before her words even finished, Yujito used the body flicker technique, appearing right in front of Shisui and walking toward him step by step. Shisui glanced at his comrade's lifeless body, then back at Yujito in the distance. His face shifted between various emotions, and his heart was overwhelmed with turmoil. If he hadn't fled earlier, would Yakumo still be alive? If he had successfully persuaded the clan leader, the mission to capture the two-tails Jinchuriki would never have happened. Or, if he had been a bit more decisive and established an unquestionable presence, Yakumo wouldn't have taken matters into his own hands, and one life could have been saved. Countless past scenes flashed before Shishui's eyes, causing a sharp pain in his head. Then, a few drops of blood tears streamed from his eyes. When he opened them again, the spinning three-tomoe Sharingan was revealed, ultimately solidifying into the shape of a shuriken. Yujito didn't understand what was happening, but Shishui's unusual state made her feel uneasy. Taking a deep breath, she resumed her disdainful expression. Even if Shizue had hidden some of his power, he could not be her opponent. There was an insurmountable chasm between a Jinchuriki and an ordinary ninja. This Uchiha before her was no different. He could never hope to reach the level of a Jinchuriki. However, unlike the previous weakling, Shizue Uchiha still held some value as a captive. Should she take him directly, or remove his Sharingan first before taking him away? As she contemplated how to deal with Shizue, she stepped closer to him. Just as Yujito extended her right hand, preparing to pluck Shizue's eyes out, he suddenly lifted his head. The shuriken-shaped Sharingan sparked her alertness. In the next moment, a chakra skeletal structure projected around Shizue, and the Susanoo formed in an instant. Shizue wasn't entirely aware of what had happened to his eyes, but instinct compelled him to attack Yujito. The Susanoo's arm extended, and it punched Yujito squarely. Hit by such a heavy blow, Yujito was sent flying over 10 meters, crashing into the ground. As she got back to her feet, Yujito looked at Shizue, and instead of fear, excitement lit up her expression. The stronger Shizue was the greater the value of this prize. And that peculiar-looking Sharingan of his, could it be the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan? If it truly was, it could resolve a significant threat to the village. At that moment, Shizue fixed his gaze on Yujito and activated his Sharingan Ganjutsu. Locked onto by the Mangekyo Sharingan, a chill ran down Yujito's spine as she lost control of her body and found herself in a mysterious space. I've been caught in a Ganjutsu? Yujito's face grew serious. Ever since she became a Jinchuriki, she had never been controlled by Ganjutsu. The two-tails cat within Yujito noticed her expression and said calmly, Yujito, you're indeed trapped in a Ganjutsu, but I'm here, so you don't need to worry. I'll break the Ganjutsu for you. With that, a wave of deep blue chakra surged in, shattering the Ganjutsu space like a mirror. Upon escaping the illusion, Yujito looked at Shizue, now protected by the Susanoo, and her demeanor shifted. No longer did she see him as a mere obstacle, he was a true enemy. At this moment, Shizue also realized something was different. Seeing the shuriken-shaped Sharingan reflecting off the sword blades, a bitter smile crept onto his face. His long-desired Mangekyo Sharingan had awakened, but the comrades he wanted to protect were already in peril. It was a cruel irony. Suppressing the complicated thoughts in his heart, Shizue turned his gaze to Yujito and commanded the Susanoo to launch an attack. Chapter 181, Arrival of the Tree World. Quickly rising from the ground, Yujito looked warily at the imposing figure of Susanoo. Although she didn't know exactly what technique Shizue was using, her instincts told her that his green, demon-like entity was connected to the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan. She sensed that this technique had the power to rival a tailed beast. With this realization, Yujito began drawing a large amount of chakra from the two tails within her. What had originally been a thin cloak of tailed beast chakra now enveloped her entirely, transforming her into the full tailed beast form, a massive, blue-flamed two-tailed cat. In her beast form, Yujito flashed out of sight, circling Susanoo as she launched blue fireballs from her two fan-like tails. Wherever the fireballs hit, even solid rock was left with gaping holes. Yet, when they struck Susanoo, they caused little damage. Seeing that her fire-style attacks were ineffective, Yujito swiftly moved behind Susanoo, slashing her claws down towards its head, leaving 3 deep claw marks. After jumping back to create distance, Yujito relaxed slightly and remarked, seems like the Mangekyo Sharingan isn't that impressive after all. The so-called Shinobi World's demon is just an overrated name. Despite this harsh critique of Madara Uchiha, Shizue's expression didn't change much. Awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan had granted him Susanoo, giving him the strength to fight a Jinchuriki head-on. But maintaining Susanoo consumed an enormous amount of chakra. With the chakra he had left, he could only keep it up for another 3 minutes before his strength and chakra would be completely exhausted. If he couldn't defeat Yujito within these 3 minutes, not only would he fail to avenge Ikimo, but he might also lose his own life. Fortunately, along with the Mangekyo, he had also awakened the powerful illusion technique known as Kodo Umatsukami. This Ganjutsu was much stronger than ordinary ones, capable of altering an enemy's will. However, it had a long cooldown after each use, meaning Shizue had only one chance. If he failed, he would have to flee. With the intent to control Yujito using Kodo Umatsukami, Shizue pushed Susanoo to its limits. It expanded and entered its third form, gaining flesh, armor, and a spiraling longsword in hand. The surge of chakra startled Yujito, but she quickly saw through Shizue's facade, recognizing his waning strength. She lunged at Susanoo again, tearing through it with her claws. The once impenetrable Susanoo shattered like glass, and Shizue, now exposed, plummeted helplessly towards the ground. Yujito caught him in one hand, a mocking smile on her face. However, just then, their eyes met once more before Shizue unleashed Kodo Umatsukami. A single tear of blood slid from his eye as Yujito's expression turned blank, her tail beast form dissolving at an alarming rate. Freed from Yujito's grasp, Shizue looked at her, now under his control, and began to ponder her fate. Rationally, it made sense to spare her. Taking Yujito back to the village would grant Hidden Leaf Village leverage in negotiations, and the Uchiha clan would receive significant credit. This might even improve relations between the Uchiha and the village. Emotionally, however, he still felt the urge to kill her for having killed Yakumo. Letting her live seemed like a betrayal of his fallen comrade. Suddenly, a thought crossed his mind before Shizue looked towards the depths of the canyon. Yakumo, though severely injured, might not be dead yet. Perhaps there was still time to save him. Just as Shizue moved towards the canyon, he sensed an overwhelming chakra locking onto him. Turning around, he saw that Yujito had somehow broken free from Kotoa Mitsukami's control and had re-entered her tailed beast form. This should have been impossible. The technique should have kept her under control. A grim realization dawned on Shizue. He had successfully controlled Yujito, but not the two tails within her. Without the Jinchuriki to restrain it, the beast had broken free. Now, the two tails chakra was spilling out of Yujito, forming its full physical body once more. With horror, Shizue saw the two tails preparing to unleash a tailed beast bomb. Powerless, he had no chakra left to summon Susanoo again. As the seconds passed, the once ping-pong-sized bomb swelled to the size of a millstone. If it detonated, the entire canyon would collapse. At that critical moment, a figure appeared beside Shizue, patting him on the shoulder. "It's been a while, Shizue. Looks like you've awakened some impressive eyes, the Mangekyo Sharingan, right?" Shizue spun around, startled before he saw Byakuya, dressed in the distinctive Akatsuki cloak and wearing a Hidden Leaf Village forehead protector. His expression was peculiar. Why was Byakuya here? And why was he wearing a Hidden Leaf Village forehead protector? Questions swirled in Shizue's mind, but there wasn't time to think them through. Pointing to the rampaging two tails, Shizue shouted, "Byakuya, now's not the time for this. The Jinchuriki is out of control." Byakuya nodded calmly. "I see it. It's about to fire a tailed beast bomb, but that doesn't stop us from catching up, right? It's just a disobedient little cat." Hearing this, Shizue broke out in cold sweat. Since when had a tailed beast, a force capable of destroying villages and ruling battlefields, been reduced to the status of a mere cat? "Byakuya, this is no time for jokes. If we don't work together, we'll die here. If you're that scared of this little cat, then let me make it behave for a while so it doesn't interrupt us." With that, Byakuya strode towards the two tails. As he approached the massive, mountain-like beast, he squinted slightly, calculating how best to handle it. This was his first time facing off against a tailed beast. He had fought powerful humans like Hanzo and Sasori, but they were nothing like the chakra-formed tailed beasts. These creatures couldn't be killed easily unless one wielded wood style, the Sharingan, or advanced sealing techniques. Conveniently, Byakuya had mastered all three. His only dilemma now was deciding which technique to display in front of Shizue. After a brief moment of contemplation, Byakuya clasped his hands together and slammed them to the ground, wood style, Advent of a World of Flowering Trees. Chapter 182, The Defeat of the Two Tails Wood Style, Advent of a World of Flowering Trees. As Byakuya's low voice echoed, the once calm earth split in two. Countless massive vines erupted from the ground, snaking towards the two tails like enormous pythons. At that moment, the tailed beast bomb, fully formed, exploded in the heart of the canyon. The brilliant light, as radiant as the sun, instantly melted the vines entangling the two tails. The massive shockwave tore through the canyon, uprooting trees, blasting dust into the air, and sweeping debris towards both ends of the ravine. Even someone as strong as Shizue could only retreat in the face of such a massive explosion. However, as the dust settled, more vines emerged from the earth, engulfing the struggling two tails once again, draining its chakra. Sensing the beast's location, Byakuya instantly appeared atop its head. Clasping his hands together, he summoned black chakra rods and plunged them into the two tails' body. The violent beast's ferocious gaze slowly softened under the intense stimuli, its wildness giving way to clarity. Fear spread across its face as it recognized Byakuya sitting atop its head, surrounded by massive vines. Old, buried memories resurfaced in its mind. As a tailed beast, the two tails could never forget the battle decades ago. A young shinobi clad in red armor had stormed its territory, muttering about how dangerous the tailed beasts were, and had sealed it away using wood-style techniques. That man was the first Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. Though the boy before it now wasn't the same person from decades ago, he wielded the same wood style, a power that, while not overwhelming, was terrifyingly formidable. Could history be repeating itself, with the shinobi world once again facing the same fate as before? Who exactly are you, boy? Why do you possess wood style? The two tails asked, but it no longer had time to demand answers. Having spent so much of its chakra, it had no choice but to retreat into Yujitona's body. Byakuya glanced at the two tails and smirked, pointing at the forehead protector he wore. As soon as the two tails saw the hidden leaf village insignia, it understood. So, this boy was a leaf shinobi, which explained his mastery of the first Hokage's wood style. The leaf had distributed the tailed beasts like playthings years ago, surely they wouldn't bother capturing it again. Yujito, however, had been deceived. If Hidden Cloud's village had known that the leaf possessed such a powerful shinobi, they would never have attacked. This mistake was going to cost them dearly. Byakuya quickly performed the four-symbol seal, reinforcing the seal on Yujito's body. Carrying the unconscious Yujito on his shoulder, Byakuya walked over to Shizui, chuckling as he said, "The annoying little cat has been dealt with. Now, no one will disturb our reunion." Shizui, who had witnessed the entire battle, felt a whirlwind of emotions. There were so many questions he wanted to ask Byakuya, but his mind was in disarray. He needed a moment to gather his thoughts. After a brief silence, Shizui finally spoke. "Byakuya, I owe you for your help, but why are you here? And why are you wearing a leaf village forehead protector?" Byakuya casually replied, "Jiraiya hired us to deal with Hidden Cloud's village. As for why I'm here, let's just say it's fate that brought the two of us together. I've been tracking down the Two Tails Jinchuriki myself." Byakuya's explanation only deepened Shizui's confusion. Shizui asked, "Why would Lord Jiraiya hire ninja from Hidden Rain Village? And Byakuya, didn't you always hate Hidden Leaf Village, constantly calling it hypocritical and dangerous? How did you end up willingly working as a mercenary for them?" Byakuya noticed Shizui's doubts but didn't rush to explain, patiently waiting for him to ask further. After wrestling with his thoughts, Shizui took a deep breath and cautiously asked, "Byakuya, how did you come to possess the first Hokage's wood style?" He stared intently at Byakuya, eager for a concrete answer. Wood style, like many Kekkei Genkai, bloodline limits, wasn't unique in its existence. However, for Hidden Leaf Village, it carried a much deeper significance. It was the unique bloodline ability of the first Hokage, and only he had ever wielded it. Now, seeing someone outside the leaf with such a power, especially someone like Byakuya who seemed to harbor negative feelings toward the village, raised serious concerns in Shizui's mind. What could this mean? If it had been someone else, like clan leader Fugaka or Elder Setsuna from years ago, they might have already used their Sharingan to cast a Genjutsu on Byakuya, forcing out the answers they wanted. Byakuya, noticing Shizui's confusion, gave a puzzled expression before nonchalantly saying, "I don't really know why I have wood style. But the Senju and Uzumaki clans have intermarried for centuries, so maybe I have some Senju blood in me." Pausing for a moment, he added, "But that's not really important. Wood style isn't as powerful as you think. I almost messed up while fighting the Two Tails just now." Shizui couldn't help but secretly retort in his mind, "It didn't look like you were struggling at all." Internally, Shizui became even more curious about Byakuya's background. He wielded Uzumaki techniques, had the first Hokage's wood style, and yet maintained a cold attitude toward Hidden Leaf Village. The mix of abilities and contradictions surrounding Byakuya was overwhelming. Realizing he wouldn't get a bold, direct answer from Byakuya, Shizui decided to shift the conversation. He glanced at the unconscious Yujito and asked, "Byakuya, what do you plan to do with the Two Tails Jinchuriki?" "I'm not sure yet." Byakuya looked over at Shizui before adding, "But you still haven't answered my question. Do you have the Mangekyo Sharingan?" Shizui hesitated for a moment, seemingly unsure whether to tell the truth. After a brief pause, he nodded. "Yes, my eyes are the Mangekyo Sharingan. But after gaining them, I didn't feel as happy as I thought I would. That's only natural. The Sharingan evolves through extreme emotions, and those emotions often come from tragedy," Byakuya remarked casually. "So, did you awaken your Mangekyo by seeing through Hidden Leaf Village, through the Uchiha, or through yourself?" Though Byakuya's tone was light, his words struck deep in Shizui. Once again, Byakuya had seen through his inner thoughts. The fact that Byakuya knew the secrets behind the Sharingan's evolution, and understood the tensions between the Uchiha and the village, deeply unsettled Shizui. Could Byakuya also know about his Mangekyo technique, Kodo Matsukami? While Shizui was wrestling with his worries, Byakuya didn't press further. Instead, he used the teleportation jutsu to move among the rubble in the canyon and found the injured Yakumo. Byakuya felt Yakumo's body and frowned. "Shizui, this person is from your clan, right? Judging by his injuries, he won't be able to become a ninja again." "Won't be able to become a ninja again?" Shizui reacted quickly and asked urgently, "Byakuya, do you mean he'll still be able to survive?" Byakuya nodded and said, "Of course, he can live. These aren't fatal injuries." Chapter 183, I still want to give it a try. Before Shizue could speak, Byakuya took the initiative to pull out a blood bag and poured it directly into Yakumo's mouth, simultaneously starting to perform medical ninjutsu. Under the effects of the medical ninjutsu and the Uzumaki blood, the previously barely breathing Yakumo's face regained some color. After realigning his internal organs, the ones that had been pierced by a kunai began to rapidly heal. Soon, only a frightening-looking hole remained, but the life-threatening danger was gone. Seeing Byakuya's extraordinary medical skills, Shizue was momentarily stunned. He was well aware of the severity of Yakumo's injuries. Even if they called upon Lady Tsunade, the Slug Princess, the chances of saving him would have been less than 30%. Yet, Byakuya had managed to rescue him with just a bag of blood and his medical ninjutsu. Noticing Shizue's strange gaze, Byakuya let out a small snort. Jealous? This is the power of the Uzumaki bloodline. It's because of this ability that Hidden Village, isolated overseas, was destroyed by an alliance of enemies. Hearing this, Shizue fell silent. He didn't know much about Hidden Village's history, but he was aware that Hidden Village and Hidden Leaf Village had been allies, to the point that even Hidden Leaf Village's forehead protector design was modeled after the Uzumaki clan's crest. However, as time passed, the Uzumaki clan had gradually faded into a mere name. This made him start to worry about his own clan's fate. Due to various reasons, the Uchiha clan had faced ostracism from both the village and the Hokage's office. Would they one day face a crisis similar to the Uzumaki clans? As this thought crossed his mind, Shizue suddenly understood why Byakuya harbored such deep hostility toward the village. It wasn't because Byakuya had some prophetic ability, nor because his intelligence analysis was exceptionally sharp. It was because the Uzumaki clan, to which Byakuya belonged, had already experienced everything he feared. After finishing the treatment, Byakuya tossed Yakumo over to Shizue's side. Feeling the warmth and breathing of his comrade, Shizue let out a sigh of relief and then looked over to Yujiro, waiting for Byakuya to deal with the Jinchuriki. Seeming to understand Shizue's thoughts, Byakuya chuckled and said, Shizue, are you interested in the Two Tails Jinchuriki? If you offer a suitable price, I wouldn't mind letting you take the credit. Are you asking me to take the credit? Isn't Hidden Rain Village interested in the achievement of defeating the Two Tails Jinchuriki? Byakuya shook his head lightly. Achievements can't be eaten as food. With that old man Hanzo in Hidden Rain Village, we don't need additional deterrents. It's better to let Uchiha take the credit. Considering Byakuya's offer for a moment, Shizue then asked, what does Uchiha need to give in order to buy the Two Tails Jinchuriki from you? Byakuya looked at the Two Tails Jinchuriki and replied, it's simple. Uchiha gets the credit for defeating the Two Tails Jinchuriki, and we in Hidden Rain Village get the Two Tails. Both sides get what they need. Hearing this, Shizue's expression became more serious. It was clear that Byakuya had come for the Two Tails. If Hidden Rain Village were to obtain a tailed beast, their already powerful village would firmly step into the ranks of the 5 great ninja villages, becoming the 6th great village. After thinking for a moment, Shizue said, if you really take away the Two Tails Jinchuriki, Hidden Clouds Village won't let it slide. They'll definitely come after Hidden Rain Village. Byakuya nodded and chuckled. If the Two Tails Jinchuriki were still alive, then Hidden Clouds Village would certainly cause trouble. But if the Jinchuriki is already dead? Would Hidden Clouds Village really avenge a dead person? Upon hearing this, Shizue's previously narrowed gazes eased up a bit. At present, the Two Tails Jinchuriki had fallen into their hands, and as long as Shizue and Byakuya reached an agreement, the fate of the Two Tails, whether to live or die, was up to them. Though a living Two Tails Jinchuriki could bring greater benefits to the village, Shizue couldn't afford to turn against Byakuya at this moment. It would be more advantageous to claim the fame of defeating the Two Tails Jinchuriki and gain Byakuya's favor. After all, Byakuya was the one truly capable of defeating a Jinchuriki, and he had just saved both his and Yakumo's lives. He was their benefactor. After making up his mind, Shizue nodded and said, since Lord Byakuya has spoken, I can only follow your decision. After a brief division of interests, Byakuya made a hand seal and performed the wood clone jutsu. Even though Shizue had seen Byakuya use wood style before, he was still a little surprised when he saw the wood clone. Byakuya noticed Shizue's reaction but didn't say much. This was precisely the effect he wanted. As long as he casually revealed some superficial abilities in front of Shizue, Shizue would inevitably start overthinking them in his mind. After sending the wood clone off with the Two Tails Jinchuriki to a safe location, the two of them carried Yakumo and headed toward the Hidden Leaf Village camp. Shizue went to report on the defeat of the Two Tails Jinchuriki, while Byakuya was headed there to demand his reward from Jiraiya. After sprinting through the forest for some time, Byakuya and Shizue suddenly stopped. They noticed a figure standing on a distant tree branch, an Uchiha with 3 tomoe in his Sharingan. It was none other than Tech Uchiha. When Tekka saw Shizue and Yakumo, he was excited, but upon noticing Byakuya, his expression quickly darkened before he instinctively tightened his grip on his short sword. Tekka hadn't forgotten the humiliation Byakuya had subjected him to more than a year ago. He recognized that seemingly harmless smile on Byakuya's face. Seeing that Tekka was ready to attack, Shizue hurriedly spoke, "Tekka, Byakuya is not our enemy. He's a ninja hired by Lord Jiraiya." Upon hearing this, Tekka hesitantly lowered his sword, but there was still a wary look in his eyes. Byakuya instantly appeared behind Tekka, took the short sword from his waist, and after casually twirling it in his hand, he chuckled and said, "Shizue is right. If I were your enemy, I wouldn't have given you the chance to notice me." My Sharingan didn't even react. Tekka's clothes were drenched in sweat as he stared at Byakuya, his eyes filled with nothing but fear. Shizue sighed and said, "Lord Byakuya, please don't take offense. Tekka has always been impulsive. I ask for your understanding. I'm not one to hold grudges. It was just a little joke." "You definitely don't hold grudges, but that's only because your enemies are usually killed on the spot." Shizue inwardly grumbled as he walked toward Tekka. Just then, Byakuya suddenly said to Shizue, "Although it was my idea, the fame of defeating a Jinchuriki is a double-edged sword. You should consider it carefully." Shizue paused and softly replied, "I know it's a double-edged sword, but for the sake of the clan and the village, I still want to give it a try. What if it succeeds?" Hearing this, Byakuya chuckled and said, "Shizue, you make a good point. I look forward to the day you succeed. But the reality of the ninja world is even harsher than you imagine. If you ever find yourself with no other options, feel free to come and join me. I specialize in taking in those without a home." Chapter 184, Meeting Jiraiya again. "What? Shizue, you actually killed the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, Yujito ni—" Upon hearing that Shizue and Byakuya had teamed up to kill the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, Tekuchiha's eyes widened in disbelief. His face was filled with astonishment. He had seen Yujitone's strength before, which was far beyond what an ordinary Jonin could handle. The fact that Shizue had not only fought against but also defeated and killed Yujitone made him feel like the world had become unreal. Shizue nodded and then said, "To be precise, it was only possible because I teamed up with Lord Byakuya. Without him, I probably would have died along with the Two-Tails Jinchuriki." "Stop being so modest, Shizue. You're already the strongest in the clan now." Tekka completely ignored Shizue's explanation. Real accomplishments spoke much louder than words. Shizue did not deny being called the strongest in the clan. Before awakening the Mengekyo Sharingan, he might not have been a match for the clan leader, Fugaku, but now that he had the Mengekyo, he was undoubtedly the strongest Jonin in the Uchiha clan. Such is the dominance of the Mengekyo Sharingan over the ordinary Sharingan. At that moment, Tekka seemed to remember something. He glanced at both Shizue and Byakuya before asking, "Where is the body of the Two-Tails Jinchuriki?" Shizue and Byakuya exchanged a look, then gave the prepared explanation. After hearing that the body of Yujitone had been destroyed in the explosion of the tailed beast bomb, Tekka looked disappointed and sighed quietly. A living Jinchuriki was far more valuable than a dead one. Not only was the value of the tailed beast itself significant, but Yujitone's status as a high-ranking member of Hidden Cloud's village could have provided a wealth of intelligence, potentially enabling them to launch a surprise attack on the Hidden Cloud's village's forces. However, since Shizue had defeated the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, it wasn't entirely impossible that one day he could also defeat the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki, Killer Bee. After learning the details of the battle, Tekka turned his attention to the unconscious Yakumo. What happened to Yakumo? Why is he unconscious? Shizue sighed softly. Yakumo was attacked by Yujitone. If Lord Byakuya hadn't treated him in time, he would have been in grave danger. Upon learning that Byakuya had saved Yakumo, Tekka's attitude toward Byakuya shifted to one of more respect. First, because Byakuya had saved one of his clan members, which was enough to cancel out any past grudges. Second, medical ninjas are held in high esteem in the ninja world, especially those who are also capable in combat. Noticing Tekka's expression, Byakuya remarked nonchalantly, "Don't stare at me. You Uchiha won't be dodging the medical expenses. Don't think you can freeload off my supplies." A few hours later, Byakuya's group arrived at the Hidden Leaf village camp. The nearby Hidden Leaf village ninja recognized Shizue and the others, but they were suspicious of Byakuya, who clearly wasn't a Hidden Leaf village ninja based on his attire with flame cloud patterns. Particularly since Byakuya was loudly asking to meet Jiraiya. Just as Shizue was about to explain Byakuya's identity, one of the Jonin in the group suddenly seemed to recall something and said with a smile, "You must be Byakuya, the Jonin from Hidden Rain village. Lord Jiraiya specifically instructed us that if we saw you, we should bring you to the command center." "Oh? Byakuya looked at the Hidden Leaf Village Jonin with interest and laughed. Is that so? How did you recognize me so quickly? Could it be that my name has already spread across the entire ninja world? Indeed, that's the case. The Hidden Leaf Village Jonin nodded quickly but couldn't help thinking to himself, that's not what Lord Jiraiya said at all. He actually said that Byakuya is the most arrogant brat around and easy to recognize at a glance. Now it seems Jiraiya was right. This kid is so cocky that even an Uchiha Jonin addresses him as Lord. That's no ordinary level of arrogance. Byakuya had no idea what the Hidden Leaf Village ninja was thinking, but he nodded in satisfaction. Following the Jonin's lead, he headed towards the command room. As the door to the command room swung open, Byakuya saw Jiraiya deeply immersed in handling military affairs. Compared to 6 months ago, Jiraiya's usual easygoing demeanor had faded, replaced with exhaustion. The long months of war had clearly taken a toll on him, both physically and mentally. Jiraiya, who had already sensed their arrival, lifted his head to look at the group. Seeing Byakuya standing with Shizui and the other Uchiha, he looked surprised, silently wondering why Byakuya was with them. As if reading Jiraiya's thoughts, Byakuya pulled out a bag full of ninja tags and headbands and said, Jiraiya, these are all my spoils of war. You better be prepared to pay up. Jiraiya glanced at the headbands, all of which bore the insignia of the Hidden Cloud, while the ninja tags indicated their ranks and identities. After a closer inspection, Jiraiya's eyes widened in shock as he exclaimed, 21 Chunin, 5 Jonin. Did you really take down this many Hidden Clouds village ninjas by yourself, Byakuya? I'm just doing the job I was paid to do, isn't that what was agreed? Byakuya frowned slightly. Jiraiya, you're not thinking of shortchanging me, are you? Because if you are, I might just take my talents to Hidden Clouds village. This statement startled the nearby Hidden Leaf village ninjas, who now eyed Byakuya with heightened caution and suspicion. Jiraiya quickly motioned for his subordinates to stay calm and responded, I promised you'd get paid, and you will. Every Ryo will be sent to Hidden Rain village as agreed. You have my word. Only then did Byakuya's expression soften slightly. Good. I was starting to think Hidden Leaf village might be unable to afford it. After all, my subordinates have been hunting Hidden Clouds village ninja as well. I was worried you wouldn't be able to pay for all that. Jiraiya thought to himself, you might be making a killing, but Hidden Leaf village certainly won't be losing out either. Shifting his focus, Jiraiya turned to Shizui and asked, we've cleared up the payment, but why are you with Shizui and the others? Byakuya, as if suddenly remembering, chuckled and said, oh, right. I also saved these Uchiha when they were fighting the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. If I hadn't intervened, they would have all died along with her. These Uchiha are your people, so you'll have to pay for saving them too. Jiraiya blinked, almost unable to believe his ears. Byakuya, what did you just say? Byakuya repeated without missing a beat, you'll have to pay me for saving them. Jiraiya shook his head and, his expression becoming more serious, asked, no, not that. You said earlier that Shizui and the others almost died. Against whom? They almost died fighting the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. Once Jiraiya was sure he hadn't misheard, he asked, you mean they almost died, but they managed to defeat Hidden Clouds village's Two-Tails Jinchuriki? That's not quite accurate, Byakuya corrected with a pause. We killed the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. Chapter 185, Jiraiya's suspicion. You've managed to survive an encounter with a Jinchuriki, that's already impressive. But... Jiraiya suddenly stopped mid-sentence, realizing something. His eyes widened in shock. Wait. Did you just say that you killed the Two-Tails Jinchuriki? Byakuya casually found a place to sit and, without much care, said, with my strength and Shizui's, taking down the Two-Tails Jinchuriki wasn't that hard. Does that sound strange to you? Of course, it sounded strange. A Jinchuriki possessed the terrifying power of a tail beast within them. Throughout history, except for legendary figures like the first Hokage and Madara Uchiha during the Warring States period, few had ever taken Jinchuriki lightly. They were essentially walking natural disasters due to the immense power of the tailed beast sealed inside them. However, considering Yujito Niz, the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, relatively young age and Byakuya and Shizui's abilities, it wasn't completely impossible for them to have defeated her. Shizui was known as Uchiha's top genius, and Byakuya was a monster capable of easily defeating elite Jonin. After a brief pause, Jiraiya chuckled and said, the reward for defeating a Jinchuriki is immeasurable. I'll need to report this to the Hokage and get his opinion. But don't worry, Byakuya, Hidden Leaf Village will definitely provide the appropriate compensation. Hearing this, Byakuya nodded in satisfaction, muttering softly to himself, didn't expect to get such an extra reward on this trip, not only the payment for rescuing the Uchiha but also the bounty for Yujito Niz. Though Byakuya's voice was low, Jiraiya heard it clearly, and a hint of doubt crossed his mind. Could it be that Yujito wasn't taken down by Byakuya but rather by Shishui's team? With his thought, Jiraiya turned his gaze towards Shishui and asked, "Shishui, why don't you tell me the details of this mission?" Shishui nodded lightly and, as planned, recounted their prepared story. According to Shishui, their team had stumbled upon Yujito, who was operating alone. After a grueling battle, they managed to subdue her, but they nearly died in the explosion caused by the tail beast bomb. After hearing this, Jiraiya's expression became skeptical. He wasn't completely convinced by Shishui's account. After all, Jiraiya himself had experience battling Jinchuriki and knew firsthand that they were never so easy to defeat. However, the power of the Sharingan was well known in the ninja world. With the right tactics and an element of surprise, a victory wasn't entirely out of the question. If Shishui really had managed to defeat Yujito, then the Uchiha clan now had an elite ninja on par with Kage-level strength. At this moment, Byakuya shot an annoyed look at Shishui and said irritably, "The Jinchuriki was taken down by Shishui, but if it weren't for my intervention, Shishui would have died along with the two tails. Jiraiya, given our relationship, I assume you make sure my name is included in the report, right?" This remark immediately drew the attention of everyone in the room, who were all astonished at Byakuya's shamelessness. Their understanding of his audacity reached new heights. Jiraiya couldn't help but chuckle at this and said, "Don't worry, I'll make sure to mention you both in my report to the Hokage. But defeating the two-tails Jinchuriki is no small matter. I'll need time to adjust our strategic plans. You can leave for now." With that, Byakuya and Shishui didn't linger in the command room and quickly took their leave. After Byakuya and Shishui left, Jiraiya put away his smile and turned toward the back room, saying, "Shikaku, Choza, what do you think about the credibility of Byakuya and Shishui's claims?" Shikaku Nara stepped out of the room, looking at Jiraiya and responding, "We'll know soon enough whether the two-tails Jinchuriki was truly eliminated. There's no need for Byakuya and Shishui to deceive us." Hearing this, Jiraiya let out a soft sigh. "Shikaku, you know that's not what I'm asking." Shikaku furrowed his brows, a bit puzzled. "Then what exactly are you doubting, Jiraiya?" "If they really eliminated the two-tails Jinchuriki, it's a good thing for the village, and the Uchiha will get the credit they want." "That's true. Maybe I'm overthinking it." Seeing Shikaku deliberately feigning ignorance, Jiraiya decided not to dwell on the details. In Jiraiya's opinion, there were several loopholes in Byakuya and Shishui's story, raising suspicions that they might be selling their achievements to the Uchiha. After all, with Shishui's strength, it would be impossible to defeat a Jinchuriki unless he possessed the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan. But if Shishui did indeed have the Mangekyo, it would likely lead to chaos within the village once again. Shikaku had guessed these possibilities as well, which was why he was pretending to be oblivious. He wanted to avoid getting embroiled in the conflicts between the Hokage Tower and the Uchiha. The Uchiha taking credit for eliminating the two-tails Jinchuriki might not necessarily be a good thing for them either. Returning to the main topic, Jiraiya asked Shikaku, "When do you think I should report the news about Yujito to the Hokage? If she has really been eliminated, should we continue to defend or take the opportunity to launch a counterattack?" Shikaku pondered for a moment before saying, "Jiraiya, it's likely that Hidden Cloud's village hasn't yet received news of Yujito's death. This would be a prime opportunity for us to launch a counterattack." After a brief pause, Shikaku added, "But my suggestion is that we should hold our ground here." "Why?" Jiraiya didn't understand Shikaku's plan. The most optimal choice right now would be to expand their victory, yet Shikaku was advising him to maintain their position. Shikaku took a deep breath and explained, "If this were just a single battle, then yes, it would be ideal for us to push into the Land of Lightning and destroy Hidden Cloud's village. But the village has enemies besides just Hidden Cloud's village. If we advance into the Land of Lightning, Hidden Stone's village and Hidden Mist village would definitely intervene. Also, while Hidden Rain village is our ally now, that might not be the case in the future." Upon hearing this, Jiraiya's expression became serious as he grasped Shikaku's perspective. If Hidden Leaf village were to fail in this invasion by Hidden Cloud's village, they would lose their ally in the Land of Water and potentially give up land in the northeastern region. However, if Hidden Cloud's village faced a total collapse, it was possible that Hidden Stone's village and Hidden Mist village would secretly ally with Hidden Cloud's village to counter Hidden Leaf village. Hidden Rain village could then gain power in the chaos of war, posing a threat to Hidden Leaf village's safety. Although Shikaku's words were harsh and risked damaging the relationship between Hidden Rain village and Hidden Leaf village, Jiraiya understood that Shikaku's suspicions had merit. While Hidden Rain village was currently managed by Yahiko and others, the real puppet master remained Hanzo of the Salamander. This figure was renowned in the ninja world and required careful handling. With this in mind, Jiraiya sighed softly. The ninja world was filled with deceptions and betrayals. He had to accept that the peaceful world he longed for, where people could understand each other without conflict, might not exist after all. Even this ninja, who so desperately craved peace, was already stained with blood. Chapter 186, Lightning Shadow and Killer Bee. After leaving the command room, Byakuya originally planned to depart from the Hidden Leaf village camp, but at Shizue's enthusiastic invitation, he went to the Uchiha camp with Shizue. Before reaching the camp, Byakuya saw Fugaku leading a group of Uchiha ninjas to him. Fugaku Uchiha's appearance fits the standard of born evil. His eyes and expression are always cold, as if everyone else owed him a fortune. Before Byakuya could greet him, Fugaku spoke up, "Shizue, this person beside you must be Byakuya, the disciple of the demigod Hanzo, who once captured you and Tekka and the others." Byakuya showed a look of surprise and said, "I didn't expect that a nobody like me would be remembered by the head of the Sharingan clan. I'm truly flattered." Faced with Byakuya's slightly sharp reply, Fugaku pondered for a few seconds. Since the last time Byakuya visited Hidden Leaf village with Yahiko and the others, Fugaku had conducted an investigation into Byakuya, knowing that he was the one who had kidnapped Shizue and was also a disciple of Hanzo. Shizue's expression was somewhat awkward as he quickly said, "Lord Fugaku, this time it was all thanks to Byakuya. If it weren't for him, I, Tekka, and the others wouldn't have been able to return." "I know." Fugaku looked at Byakuya and smiled, saying, "I was just joking with you, Byakuya. You saved Shizue and Tekka, so you are already a friend of the Uchiha clan." Byakuya smiled back, "Chief Fugaku, you really have a good sense of humor. However, last time was indeed a misunderstanding. I thought you were fighting over prey, and resolving the misunderstanding was all that was needed. However, Hanzo has always been interested in your Uchiha clan. How about visiting Hidden Rain village if you have the opportunity?" Upon hearing this, a glint flashed in Fugaku's eyes. Byakuya's words seemed casual, but they revealed a lot of information. First, Hanzo's interest in the Uchiha clan was both good and bad. Secondly, the invitation to visit was surely more than a simple visit. It suggested that Hidden Rain village might be looking to recruit the Uchiha. Otherwise, Byakuya, who had previously kidnapped Shizue, wouldn't be so generous toward the Uchiha this time. Of course, to get the real answer, he would have to ask Shizue, as he had spent the most time with Byakuya, both before and now. After finding an excuse to divert Byakuya, Fugaku led Shizue to a corner. Shizue knew Fugaku's intentions and said, "Are you wanting to inquire about the Two Tails Jinchuriki, Lord Fugaku?" Fugaku did not answer directly, staring at Shizue. Under Fugaku's gaze, Shizue slowly spoke, "The Two Tails Jinchuriki was not solely hunted down by me, it was a joint effort between me and Byakuya. This is a deal between Byakuya and me." Upon hearing this, Fugaku's doubts were considerably eased. He had wondered when Shizue had the strength to die alongside the Two Tails Jinchuriki, but it turned out they had worked together to defeat it. However, being able to work together to defeat the Two Tails Jinchuriki showed Shizue's strength. Fugaku had no objections to the deal between Shizue and Byakuya. If it were him, he would also make such a deal with Byakuya, as the Uchiha needed achievements to prove themselves. "You did well this time. I will give Byakuya the money he was promised." After a pause, Fugaku continued, "However, the Hokage office will definitely have suspicions about us. We Uchiha need more achievements to prove ourselves." Shizue nodded and said, "Lord Fugaku, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." At that moment, Fugaku suddenly remembered something and said, "Shizue, there's one more thing I almost forgot to ask you. Have you awakened your Mangekyo Sharingan?" Upon hearing this, Shizue felt a surge of tension, hesitating over whether or not to confess. After pondering for a moment, he decided to conceal the news. "Mangekyo Sharingan? Isn't that just a legend within the clan? Since that incident, there hasn't been a Mangekyo Sharingan in the clan. Is there really none?" Fugaku confirmed again. Shizue shook his head, letting out a soft sigh as he said, "Clan head, I also want to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, but it's not that simple to activate." Fugaku stared at Shizue for a long time before sighing. "When I heard you and Byakuya teamed up against the Jinchuriki earlier, I thought you had awakened the Mangekyo. If the clan truly had a pair of Mangekyo, the chances of competing for the position of Hokage would increase significantly." Shizue nodded in agreement. "Yeah, if clan head Fugaku awakened a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan, this war could be resolved quickly." Upon hearing this, Fugaku waved his hand, signaling Shizue to leave. Watching Shizue's departing figure, Fugaku's expression became unpredictable. Although he couldn't find evidence of Shizue possessing the Mangekyo Sharingan, his intuition told him that Shizue absolutely had it. Otherwise, Shizue wouldn't have been able to return to rescue Yakumo, nor could he have activated Susanoo. Indeed, After Yakumo woke from his coma, he reported to Fugaku what he had seen before losing consciousness. In a daze, Yakumo had seen the icy green phantom of a divine spirit. That divine spirit could not be any other ninjutsu, it could only be the legendary Susanoo. As for why Shizui was unwilling to mention the Mangekyo Sharingan, it was likely out of concern that the Hokage faction would accuse him of instigating the Nine Tails incident. However, it was impossible for Shizui's character to do such a thing. Additionally, it related to Shizui's ideology. Like Kagami Uchiha, Shizui was full of fantasies about the Hokage faction, but the position of Hokage could not be granted by the Hokage faction, one must fight for it through strength. Thinking of this, Fugaku let out a soft sigh. Why did every ninja in the clan who awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan fail to understand the family? Madara was like this, and so was Shizui. In the land of waterfalls, the fourth Raikage was scouting the front lines with Killer Bee. Unlike the leaders of other ninja villages who stayed at the central army, the fourth Raikage enjoyed personally leading the charge alongside Killer Bee. This action not only boosted morale but also maximized the effectiveness of a Kage-level powerhouse. However, there were downsides. If they encountered a large enemy force's siege, even a Kage-level powerhouse could be overwhelmed by a sea of enemies. Nevertheless, the fourth Raikage was not worried at all. Because he was acting alongside Killer Bee, who was a Jinchuriki of the Eight Tails. While Killer Bee might not be as skilled in other areas, he excelled at countering sea tactics. At that moment, the fourth Raikage suddenly stopped and looked toward the forest behind him. From the forest emerged a Hidden Clouds village Anbu, who cautiously approached the fourth Raikage and handed over an intelligence scroll. The fourth Raikage took the scroll, his expression shifting between anger and uncertainty. Killer Bee, noticing the fourth Raikage's expression, asked in confusion, "Big brother, what happened?" The fourth Raikage said angrily, "We just received news that a team from the Land of Rain has gone missing." Chapter 187, The Hidden Cloud is no longer Hidden Cloud's village of the past. "Oh, my big brother, the Jinchuriki has disappeared." Upon hearing this, Killer Bee started rapping to himself. He didn't care about the news of the Jinchuriki's disappearance. Like him, the Jinchuriki had also been a perfect vessel who entered the fountain of truth. Although his combat strength was not on par with himself and Brother A, he was still among the top in the village. In Killer Bee's eyes, the Jinchuriki must have slipped away from his guards and gone out to hunt Hidden Lee village ninjas. He understood this well. It was truly unbearable to feel like one was always being watched. Seeing that Killer Bee still didn't understand the seriousness of the situation, the fourth Raikage said sternly, "Killer Bee, it's not just the Jinchuriki that's missing since even the Anbu assigned to protect him have lost contact." Killer Bee's expression changed slightly as he instantly grasped the gravity of the situation. The Jinchuriki might act recklessly, but the Anbu certainly wouldn't. With the Anbu protecting the Jinchuriki also missing, it was possible that the Jinchuriki had encountered danger. But among the ninjas on the Hidden Leaf village front lines, there shouldn't be anyone capable of defeating the Jinchuriki. At that moment, the fourth Raikage seemed to remember something, his expression darkening as he said, "Killer Bee, do you remember the incident with Blue Bee?" Killer Bee nodded. He certainly recalled that Blue Bee had been assassinated by Orochimaru. If Blue Bee hadn't died, he wouldn't have been able to become the Eight Tails Jinchuriki. The fourth Raikage continued, "I suspect that the Jinchuriki may have encountered an attack from Orochimaru. But even if she was attacked, the Jinchuriki should at least be able to send out a message." After analyzing for a while, the fourth Raikage couldn't come up with any useful strategies, and so he decided to suspend the frontline offensive and headed toward Hidden Cloud's village camp. Rather than racking his brains here, it would be better to hear his subordinates' opinions. Upon reaching Hidden Cloud's village camp, the fourth Raikage entered the command room. Inside, there were terrain maps laid out, and several Hidden Cloud's village jonin were discussing the disappearance of the Jinchuriki. Sensing the footsteps behind him, the Hidden Clouds village jonin quickly turned to face the fourth Raikage and bowed, saying, "Fourth Lord, the search teams for the Jinchuriki have already set out. Here are the results they brought back." The fourth Raikage nodded. He wanted to hear his subordinates' opinions. Although Hidden Clouds village was dominated by the Yatsuki clan, the disappearance of the Jinchuriki was a significant matter that concerned the future strategy of Hidden Clouds village and whether they could seize the land of waterfalls. Upon hearing the fourth Raikage's command, a jonin named Mobui lifted a kunai and pointed to a specific area on the map, saying, "Fourth Lord, the Anbu assigned to the Jinchuriki lost contact in this area, which is about 150 kilometers from the Hidden Leaf village camp. In this area, there are traces left by an explosion of a tailed beast bomb in a nearby canyon. From this, we can deduce that the Jinchuriki likely encountered elite Hidden Leaf village ninjas and used the tailed beast bomb as a trump card, but still couldn't escape Hidden Leaf village's siege." After a pause, Mabui continued, As for the matter of the Jinchuriki being captured by Hidden Leaf Village, none of us have any objections, but we are somewhat uncertain about the identity of the attackers.